Welcome, dear colleagues. Welcome to this side event of the High Level Political Forum 2021, visualizing the SDGs with the partners of the Venice Cities Solution. The Venice Cities Solution is an annual event that is convened by the Italian Association, AICRE, of local and regional governments, by UNDP, by UN Habitat, and by United Cities and local governments. It is our collective efforts to ensure that local and regional governments-led practices can lead to the localization of the Sustainable Development Goals, but also that we come to realize how much of the activity that takes place at local level contributes to that to those global agendas. And finally, what we also try to do is to foster the interaction between communities and all stakeholders in this action. When we started working together on this, we came to realize that while many local and regional governments felt that the Sustainable Development Goals was something that was far away from them in an abstract agenda of the United Nations, most of their activities, what they did every day, was very, very related to the goals the international community had set for itself. And the idea of the Venice City Solutions is to bring that close to the ground. So we have been meeting a couple of times now virtually. It goes a little bit against our nature, I have to say, because we want to see actually what is happening there. We want to establish those special contacts that are going to enable us to transform the way that we do things and to go to the next level of partnerships. But I think it is really relevant that the movement has not stopped, that our partnerships and partners keep increasing. And it is particularly important to bring our recommendations, our findings to the high level political forum, because the international community, national governments, but also development agencies need to understand that this movement is happening, that is happening on the ground, and it gives both the agenda and the world as a whole a lot of power of transformation. So our key findings during the last edition were really linked to the fact that we need to act together to overcome problems and also to fight for transformation. Putting communities at the heart was one of the action, was a recurrent concern that all the stakeholders brought to the table. It is also still a challenge to truly have the broader public understand how local, global challenges are. The interconnection between the two is still very important, and hence that title, Visualizing SDGs, remains extremely important. Cities and territories are very important spaces for experimentation and for transformation. And we need to also come to realize that local solutions nowadays are not only local, but neither are global challenges. They are not only global. And so we have, I think, progressed a lot in transforming the narrative around this. Now what we want to see is the resources and the partnership to actually upscale some of the good practices that we have been finding. I am proud to say that for us, the Venice City Solution, so this environment and these partners are also the hub of hubs of our local for action hubs. They multiply, they visualize, and they inspire activities of local governments around the world, which we in United Cities and local governments certify as local for action. Those spaces that are currently contributing to our global agendas. And I will end by saying that we also want, in the realm of the Venice City Solution, we want to make a link between the personal commitments, which remain extremely relevant, and personal responsibility, and collective action and collective responsibility. There is no level of government that is better suited to make that connection than local and regional governments. And I think that is also a very important dimension that will touch upon the governance transformation that we need for action. There are many other things that I could say, but I think the most important one is that we are ready to change the quality of our partnerships, to put communities at the center, and to challenge the governance formats and models that we have currently, to actually facilitate a renewed type of service provision that we will need to achieve the SDGs. I'll stop here, and I will now give the floor to a political voice, a representative of a regional government. He is also the president of AICRE, of the Italian Association. He is the president of Emilia-Romagna, a very beautiful and significant region in Italy. And he's also the president of the European section of UCIG, of CEMR, the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. So many hats in that voice. I understand we have inputs from him. President Bonaccini, we give him the floor now.
Venice Solution 2030 che abbiamo attivato già da tempo e che è anche Local for Action Hub ONU è uno di quei luoghi importanti perché il dialogo, la cooperazione decentrata in riferimento agli SDGs e all'Agenda 2030 per gli enti locali sta esattamente all'altezza delle sfide che abbiamo davanti. La più importante delle quali è salvare e salvaguardare il bene più prezioso che abbiamo, cioè il pianeta Terra. E gli interventi di crescita e di sostenibilità sono quelli prioritari e decisivi per garantire che vi sia sviluppo, accesso a servizi e soprattutto garanzia che il lavoro non manchi a nessuno in ogni parte del mondo, perché lavoro è dignità e perché qualità dei servizi per le persone ha direttamente a che fare con la qualità delle nostre vite. Buon lavoro a tutti e a presto.
So with that voice and that testimony, the proof of the political mandate that we have in this endeavor, I would like to introduce a very important partner as well of the Venice City Solution. And I would say a partner without whom we wouldn't have been able to develop this concept, which is the UN SDG Action campaign. The type of campaigning, of activism that the Action campaign has been promoting over the year is an inspiration to all of us. And I think it has triggered new types of partnerships, and above all, a lot of ownership and involvement worldwide. So I'm delighted to have with us Xavi Longan, lead of partnerships and operations of the United Nations SDG Action campaign, who is going to be facilitating the next segment. And I would like to take this opportunity, Xavi, to ask you one question before you start doing your formal job, and that is, do you also feel that we have evolved in the way that we do partnerships? What do you feel that has changed? Is it the actors that have changed, or is it rather what we prioritize doing together? I know it's a difficult question, but you only have 2 minutes to answer it. Go ahead, Xavi.
Thank you so much, Emilia. Thank you for putting me on the spot. But most of all, thank you for the kind introduction. I think both have changed. I think how partners work together has changed. I think what's prioritized has changed. I feel that, and that's a sort of sentiment that the entire team in the UN SDG Action Campaign shares, is that we are at a turning point for people and planet. The pandemic has put us in this position, and we're in a position to make bold choices, to make bold decisions on how we want to go forward. And that goes to your question. So we need to work together. We need to think outside the box, work with partners that were not there before, that we didn't work with before. And we need to get our priorities straight, which should involve, obviously, a sort of healthy, just, and environmentally friendly recovery to the pandemic. That should be our goal, working together with all constituencies. So local governments is at the center of this effort. We need civil society, we need the creative sector, we need private sector, and many others. Thank you, Emilia.
Thank you, Xavi. I very much agree with you that we are at this kind of foundational moment, and that this kind of realization that we need to transform and that we are not able to do things in the same way is what is really defining our partnerships. My sense is that we are working with the same people, but we are emphasizing different issues, and hopefully we can actually make a difference together. Please do count on United Cities and local governments to trigger that change. We are working towards a renewed contract, a pact for the future, and we are delighted to continue feeding this space, the Venice City Solution, and getting out of it all this energy and inspiration to inspire local governments around the world. And now your official job, Xavi. Good luck with the moderation. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much again, Emilia. It's always very humbling to take the floor after you. I have to say that we're already doing very well with the timekeeping, so we'll try to stick to that. And let me welcome again everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Let me say first off also that we will be looking at the chat box on this event, taking your questions, and hopefully we'll have time to get our speakers involved in some of those questions. It's really, for me, a great pleasure and an honor to welcome you all. We have with us 4 distinguished speakers who are very passionate about the SDGs, just as we all are. I will introduce them in a moment, but I would like to start with sharing a quick overview of the 4 themes that we explored last year in Venice, and that the 4 speakers will help us to navigate today. These are 4 tracks that are all related to the core principles of the Venice process, which is to generate new ideas and tools to help local governments to analyze and understand the ongoing dynamics in their cities through the lens of the SDGs. In Venice, we also want to bring along new partners that can work together with local governments to make the 2030 agenda a reality for all. So our concept of visualizing the SDGs and the 2030 agenda at local level is designed to bring to light how, within the urban context, different SDGs interact with each other, what kind of stakeholders are involved, and how to use the data gathered to devise and implement policies that can more effectively contribute to achieve the SDGs and deliver on the 2030 agenda overall. So now on to the 4 tracks, which I will outline very quickly. The first track is what we call the yellow track, which focuses on how to land the SDGs on the territory and the need to map local actions in space. We have asked our speaker for this track to showcase some examples about how to map SDG challenges and develop tools that can contribute to visualize and achieve the SDGs in urban contexts. We'll turn to that in a second, but let me tell you a bit about the second track, which is the red track. And this is about the vision for the future and the role of the SDGs as a common language that can facilitate dialogue and building common ground between different actors. The third track is the green track, which focuses on SDG interactions and connections in the city framework. Under this track, we will dwell upon the importance of a social contract, which Emilia has already referred to, between all the different stakeholders of a community in order to effectively achieve more sustainable societies. And also we'll look at how SDGs interact with each other in the very special framework that is the city. And finally, the fourth and last track is the blue track, which will serve as an invitation to all of us to know better and to understand better the local for action hubs, which, as Emilia mentioned, it's an initiative led by UCLG and launched last year during the Venice City Solutions, which has now become the moment where the UCLG local for action hubs meet and exchange every year as a sort of hub of hubs. Now, to start unpacking this very exciting and very packed program, let me turn to our first speaker, who will walk us through the yellow track on linking SDGs to the territory and mapping local actions in space. He's Peter Suska, and he's the team leader for urban economy innovation at the Fraunhofer Institute, where he helps both private and public sector clients to find the best ways to adapt to climate change in cities. He previously worked at Prague City Economic Development and is a graduate from Columbia, LSE, and Queen's University. Peter, welcome. The floor is yours.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I've prepared a presentation with pictures, which always helps to visualize what I'm talking about. I'm just not controlling it. Can someone share the presentation, or do I need to pull it up? I guess Maria, or yeah, Maria. Sorry for the pressure. All right. I might have to open it. Can I somehow? I might have to open it here as well.
You can see it actually.
I can see it, but it's very tiny. I can see it, but anyway, maybe we can go down. So Fraunhofer, and why I'm here and what I'm talking about. So we have been supporting previously UN Habitat and now UNDP. So our special connection is, of course, through Diana, who's kindly co-organized this event. We've been working together for quite some time. And Fraunhofer is Europe's largest applied research organization, with some 3 billion euros that we invest into applied research, and some of our inventions include the well-known MP3 format that all of you are using in your smartphones. Perhaps we could go to the next slide. So our institute, of course, Fraunhofer is made up of a number of different institutes, and in our institute specifically focuses on the urban realm, and we do understand the world as a place where we promote maximum livability and decrease carbon footprint where we can. Of course, last but not least, we see cities as agents that drive innovation, because of course we've learned this through our experience. We can't only rely on the market to drive innovation forward. Next slide, please. How we do it is we do use the SDGs as the basis framework to which we've linked our entire methodology. So this is an example how we break down the urban system and how we assess its sustainability. This is an assessment of one of the European cities here, and we look at urban leadership and the ability of cities to actually drive change and fulfill the different SDG goals. We look at different levers. So what are actually the different elements that a city can pull in order to drive change, and then of course what are some points of action where you would bring and mobilize an entire local ecosystem to meet your SDG targets. So SDGs for us, and I'm sure you would be happy to hear this, is a complete basis of our operation wouldn't be able to work without it. And we are very thankful that such a thing exists, because it gives us all a standard that we can all kind of link back to. Next slide is a picture that was actually used during the Venice 2030 event last year. And it was a colleague of mine who was presenting their take on how they visualize and work with SDGs. They use 3D computing solutions, and they basically would showcase different types of environmental and non-environmental data. What you see here is actually an emotional data analysis. So the participants in this particular city were able to drop their sentiments on specific intersections and parts of the city, and the city planners were able, again, to work with those and integrate those into their local strategies. Yeah, of course, again, for them, the SDGs provide a basic framework for their methods and tools of visualization to be transferable. So we work with them not only in the German context and the European context, but for example, in Montevideo. So the solutions are not reserved only for the European partners or the European public sector actors, but about the whole world. If we go to the next one, it's a very interesting one. It was another example from the next slide, from the sorry, this slide. It's just need to check from the exactly. That's the correct slide. From the event in Venice, and we work with another company called Havadava, and they what they do is they visualize air pollution and link it to climate change. They've co-developed their own satellite, and they would use satellite imaging and different types of sensoric data to actually monitor air quality in terms of what parts of a city are being affected, and how city governments can better change their approaches and install measures or put measures in place to mitigate the negative effects, of course, of air pollution. Their pilot project actually took place in Cairo with huge success, and since then it's been scaled to a couple of other cities. It's again an evidence-based SDG anchored approach to providing a visual illustration to how SDGs and SDG related measures can be put into practice in cities around the world. Next slide is a bit of a different one. So this is something because we've the discussion we've had with Diana about Venice 2030 and the event last year was, how can we drive and support individual change? How can we inspire people to take action on an individual level, not to just rely on what the government does for them? I mean, there's a famous quote from JFK who said, don't ask what you can, or don't ask the government what it can do for you, but ask yourself what you can do for your country. And I think this is kind of a great example of that in practice. So MasterCard has a spin-off, and it's called a Duconomy, and they've been working with huge data sets of carbon footprint data linked to particular products. They have millions and millions of products, everything from t-shirts to bookshelves to electronics. And so every time you do a purchase, if you have that card, or if you're part of that program, it tracks your CO2, and you can see it here very well that you've spent here, it's in Swedish krona, 3,200 Swedish krona. And you generated 56 kilograms of CO2. Now it categorizes this into air travel, transportation, groceries, clothes, and it knows what you've been buying and calculates your CO2 footprint. And this, again, evidence-based quantified approach helps you understand at the end of each month or end of each week, end of each year, how much CO2 you've produced and what measures you can take to mitigate it. So of course you can offset it by paying off to a global carbon offsetting fund, and there are other options that of course you can use. But what this does is it provides you with a very nicely graspable visual data that you can use to change your behavior in terms of what you purchase and how much CO2 you produce. So again, a very much relevant solution. I do hope that at one day all of us will have a bank bill with not just how much we spent, but how big our carbon footprint was. And perhaps we can reduce both of those numbers. Next slide is my thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and to kind of give you not a summary, but hopefully an impulse on how important the SDGs are for us and how visual tools can help us make them more understandable and relevant for not just city governments, but also individuals living in your cities. So I guess I'm open for questions. We still have maybe a couple of minutes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was absolutely fascinating. Maybe I'll share a question. I come from a campaign, so I'm always curious, of the sort of advocacy potential of any initiative, and I was wondering if you can maybe share an example or just some thoughts on how these visualizations, this data analysis can be turned into a sort of advocacy tool that then constituencies, whether it's civil society or others, can use to change policy, to bring to governments, whether at local level, national level, and use it to change policy.
I mean, the saying, a picture is more powerful than 1,000 words, right? So, but you can't have policies in cartoons. I'm sorry, I'm joking, but I think there is a line. I think images are extremely important to convince people that what we're doing makes sense and drives change. And that's what we've been doing. We've been using that as a tool of participation, as a tool of explaining to governors, to the general public, to the different stakeholders, how important it is for us to protect the environment, to build our communities in a sustainable way. And for that, it's fantastic. What I've seen some of these cities doing, particularly in Scandinavia, but not just there, is they would use those images as an illustration of the changes that will be accomplished or the problems that they're reacting to when they're pushing a particular policy forward. And I think having that as an attachment to any policy is very, very powerful. Now, of course, the visual tools nowadays are not passive, like you just saw them in a PowerPoint. But what I think the future really is this immersive experiences. You'll be actually able to experience the change. And if I had all of you here, I would take you to our digital cave, which we have here downstairs in our office. And you could experience that change. You could walk through a building, you could walk through a city, you could experience the difference between having 1,000 cars pass through a street and 14,000 cars pass through a street. You can see the air pollution levels. You can see the fine particulate matter and how that affects people. So I think we need to do both. And it might be boring to do policy, but it's very important because the images are not enough in and of themselves, and they have to build a story, and that's what we use them for, is to build story and to drive participation and community engagement on all different levels of decision making.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. Yes, I very much hope that we can soon come to see you physically and have that experience in person where you are. Thanks so much for joining us today. We know you need to run, Peter. Thank you.
There is one question here I'd like to answer. I think on low-income countries, I think the only tools that make sense are the ones that work everywhere. And I think one of the pictures I've shown from Havadava, it was actually developed in a developing country, and I think we need to sometimes really go and test these visual tools in the harshest environments, and maybe the most adversarial places, and not always pursue the easy route forward. because only then will we be able to drive change on a global level. And I think that's something to be said about the visual tools that I've shown. Most of them actually have a global impact and are globally available. Particularly, I saw that someone posted the Duconomy topic. We've been working with them, and they're basically going to scale to the rest of the world. They started out of Sweden, and I know they're growing fast. So you might be able to get your low CO2 cards, and hopefully in the next coming months and years. So, and when it comes to the visual tools, I'm sure if there are some specific questions, I'd be happy to direct you to the either myself or whoever might be the actual solution owner.
Great, thank you so much again, Peter. It was great having you, and we'll move now to the next track, which is the red track, which, as you may remember, focuses on the vision for the future. Our panelist for this track is Remy Sijping. I very much hope I'm pronouncing this remotely correctly. Remy is the chief of the Policy, Legislation and Governance section at UN Habitat. Prior to this, Remy managed the Regional and Metropolitan Planning Unit at UN Habitat and oversaw projects and programs related to national urban policies, metropolitan planning, spatial planning, integrated development plans, and smart and green cities. Remy is a graduate from the Universities of Melbourne and Yaoundé in Cameroon. Thank you, Remy, for joining us today. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javier. Colleagues, it's a great pleasure for me here on behalf of UN Habitat to first thank the co-organizing partners, especially UNDP, UCLG, ACRA, and the SDG campaign for the strong partnership that we have built over time to celebrate the Venice City Solutions and during this high-level political forum. As some of you know, the Venice City Solution is a yearly event, as was mentioned earlier, and a high-level political meeting. They have become really the milestone, the meeting moments and time to look at the global debates on the SDGs, but more importantly on what that means for local and regional entities, and the localization of SDG become very critical. In that sense, in this track, visualizing the SDG topic is of extreme relevance for cities and local and regional government in such a moment. As we have seen here, the visualization has just been shown. It's just a great illustration of such effort. We know that we are facing a multidimensional and complex crisis, of which public health and COVID is just one of them. So the full consequences on how our world and society will overcome and we look in the future is unfolding. So we cannot really say for sure, but the world will not be the same due to that the multi-dimensional crisis we are facing. But the question is, what we do know in that cities, local and regional governments are at the center of that emergency, because the size of population and high degree of interconnectivity that we have across the territory, as was mentioned earlier, is very much important in the context of the spread, say, of the virus. So we cannot work just at one level. We have to connect, we have to work at a multi-level. Therefore, the deep-rooted inequalities that we see in cities, in different nations and contexts and territories can really influence the way in which, say, COVID-19 has shown in terms of its impacts, and how some marginalized or new groups of deprived citizens have been able to face this type of situation. We have also, as I said, multiple crises. When you look at the economic decline, it's clear that cities, local and regional government may lose an average of 15 to 25% of their revenue in 2021 due to the pandemic. And this will affect very much the vulnerable communities, affect the services, especially the basic services, deepening inequalities of within spatial and social inequalities that we are already witnessing in different parts of the cities, including where you are. Therefore, I think visualizing refers to really try to imagine how the city of the future would look like and then plan accordingly with this notion that inequality, if you plan with the idea that inequality can be reduced, then it's better. We're going to cushion some of these vulnerable groups. Therefore, the SDGs is a great tool in that way to start imagining cities where no one is left behind, where no space is left behind, where the territory is considered, where there's this connection between all tiers of governments, all actors. So that's, for me, is a premises for start envisioning, imagining our future, where we see that as collective. Okay, not only that, using such imagination where we all work together help us build a common vision and plan together, but using SDGs as a tool for multi-level governance where there is not only for the public governance, but the community governance, the network of governance, where we see local, national, subnational, regional authorities working together with communities, not among the vertical and horizontal connections, but through the network of connections. The work of UN Habitat in SDG localization is very much focusing on making sure that we connect with partners like we are here, that we coordinate the implementation of the new urban agenda, that we bring this the power of urbanization at the local level. As we work through crafting the strategy for localizing SDGs at UN Habitat, we have three main areas for those who are not quite aware. It's our global urban monitoring framework that we have been tasked by the General Assembly to develop, which will be available in 2022. So we are now finalizing that. The second one is the voluntary local review. We are very pleased with our great collaboration with UCLG in developing the guidelines and the next version, and we are currently working over 69 local voluntary local reviews, and we have over 30 in the pipeline. So 2021, 2022 will be very exciting for the voluntary local reviews. And we heard earlier from Emilia saying this is a movement. It's indeed a movement that is taking the world over. The third one is really our SDG Cities flagship initiative that we do again in collaboration as our effort and contribution to localize SDGs at the really city level. Again, based on what I just discussed, we focus on the visioning first, what type of cities, what type of cities using SDG framework would look like. Then we try to develop action plan for that visualization and develop strategies and formulate specific initiatives or programs or projects for the localization, so they are not just hanging there. Okay, so for 2022, as some of you are aware, we are in Habitat 3+5. That will be something we have to work towards and use that as a platform opportunity to advance our shared partnership, our shared vision, our common interest in localizing the SDG. The other one is the World Urban Forum, the 11th edition in Katowice in Poland in June 2022, where we hope that this coalition, this movement will continue and really make a dent or make a splash during the World Urban Forum. The last one is what we have now. I'm very pleased how the Venice movement and then the high-level political forum has seen us as the the proponent of this localization of SDG, highlighting through these two important events. So to conclude, just to say that, again, we base our engagement on partnership in working together for including some joint efforts we have on local 2030 initiative, so that we have really a real global coalition for localizing SDGs. And we are very pleased that with UNDP, we co-host the secretariat for that coalition. So as we move forward, colleagues, I would like to just reiterate UN Habitat commitment and availability to continue supporting and working together to strengthen the localization, the visualization of SDGs, to raise voice of local regional governments within the international community, especially within the UN family. So count us as friends, as we always try to do. So we look forward again to continuing this rich and very fulfilling partnership and collaboration. So Xavi, that's what I had to share for now. And I would like to thank all my colleagues for this great opportunity, including Martino and many others. Over to you, Xavi.
Thanks a lot, Remy. Thank you for this very insightful contribution. And thank you also for the timekeeping. You're really making my job super easy today. I really appreciate that. Okay, I think there was an immediate question on the chat about the sort of web addresses, the URLs for these initiatives. Maybe, Remy, you can later share some links directly on the chat for everyone's benefit. There is a question also that I would like to ask you in terms of, you referred to this already, but it would be great if maybe you can elaborate a bit in terms of how do the VLRs help to visualize SDGs at city level, and maybe also linking back to the question previously to Peter, and also how these visualizations can be leveraged in the conversation with the city planners and with other levels of government. Remy.
Thanks, Xavi. Yes, we're going to post the link and many other resources we have on VLR and other resources on the chats for those who might be interested. In terms of how VLR visualization is happening at local level, through the three tools that I mentioned, say the monitoring and even the report we are producing for those who have seen sample that we are producing with UCLG. They are very much visual. They make sure that it talks to some audience. They use data, use maps, use other to actually localize, to show where the differences have been made if it's at the local level. So through the reports that we are producing, through our how we present the findings of the VLR, that's one of the instruments we are using. So that's some of the tools we are using, and we hope that when we come to Katowice, we're going to have more visual, including some audio, visual, some video of how this is happening, so that we can really go through the continuum of visualization, which is not only map or some graphs and other, to explore all types of catching people's attention on what SDG means at local level. So we'll be exploring all this media of communicating what's happening at local level.
Thank you, Remy. We really appreciate your time and contribution. Don't go away. We'll have more questions later. If you're around, we can come back to you. But now let me turn to the third speaker today for the green track, which focuses on SDG interactions and connections in the city framework. So our third speaker is Gift Ntuli. Gift is the head of experimentation at the UNDP Accelerator Lab in Zimbabwe. And before he worked at the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization as part of a team of seismologists and geophysicists. He is a geophysics and seismologist by training, and a university professor for several colleges in the United States. Gift, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone joined. First of all, I want to say thanks a lot on behalf of the UNDP Accelerator Labs for this invitation. For those who don't know, the labs were a group, a network of, I would say, innovation labs, I should say, but at the same time, I would say a learning network comprised of people who are trying to learn how to accelerate development and also at the same time, how we can use new data sets and what kind of partners we can bring together to make sure that we achieve the 2030 agenda faster. So really appreciate it. And for today, I'm going to spend the next 9 to 10 minutes walking you through some of the work that we've done in Harare, Zimbabwe, in trying to understand how SDGs interact in an informal environment and how that can help us address the challenge of urban hunger. So if we go to the first slide, just a little bit information about Harare. It's called the Sunshine City because there's always sun in Harare. 3 things to note about Harare is that it's a very young city with the average age being around 18. And at the same time, it's highly informal because generally in Zimbabwe, about 90% of the country is informal. But at the same time, what we noted that is because of COVID, there's been this drastic increase in urban hunger. And us as the Accelerator Lab in Zimbabwe, that's the question we're trying to answer, to say what can be done from an SDG angle to address the challenge of urban hunger in Zimbabwe. So if we look at the next slide, what we note, I'll quickly highlight that informality in Zimbabwe is very complex. If you look at urban hunger in Harare, we see that the informal systems that provide food into Harare are highly sensitive and as a result more susceptible to COVID. We have the production side, the distribution, and also the consumption. But a key factor along all these lines, I would say, is 2 things. First is the unavailability of data. But at the same time, this fact that a highly complex financial environment and also bylaw environment opens up opportunities for, I would say, these middlemen to take advantage of the system. So as a result, for us, if you go to the next slide, the question we had that we posed as the lab was, how can you measure, on the next slide, please, how can you measure SDG interaction and engagement in a highly informal environment? And we ended up realizing that there's 2 ways you can go about this. The first one is to do data analytics. And then the second way is to do what we call a systems thinking. And with data analytics, if we look at the next slide, we worked with a startup in Silicon Valley called Flow to analyze huge amounts of data spanning over 8 years, looking at supply and demand or volumes being supplied to, or farm produce being supplied to Harare. And what we're doing is that we're trying to use this information to create a proxy for SDG interactions and connections from an angle of urban hunger. Then the second thing was that we're looking at treating the challenge as a system that's composed of 3 axes. And from this system, you're able to ask yourself, which SDGs do you need to query and what relationships exist between those SDGs for you to then understand how to tackle the challenge you're trying to tackle. So I think we might have a glitch because I see the slides are not progressing. But the next slide that we're going to look at, we're going to start, so if we go to the next slide after this, please. You see that, we start looking at interactions between our SDGs, and clearly the first thing we noted from our data was that there's a strong relationship between climate change and the amount of produce being supplied in Harare, mainly noting from the data sets, which I'll be happy to share after this, that drought is causing a dip in produce, but at the same time, we're seeing that leading to increase in poverty and hunger. And if we look at the next slide, we also used the system approach to look at the relationship between gender, COVID, and hunger. And what we noted is that because of a lack of infrastructure in Harare, what's happening is that it's easy for female vendors who constitute the majority of vendors in Harare to be harassed and also coerced into activities that they might not want to take part in. And for us, we're saying it's mostly because of the lack of clean water, sanitation, energy, storage facilities, and then that also leads to the next relationship that we looked at, which was looking from an angle, next slide, looking from an angle of sustainable cities and production and consumption. And from this, we again went back to data analytics, and we're looking at what amount of produced food that gets into markets is consumed and what percentage ends up getting lost to food waste. And what we saw again was that there's need for us to understand how we can better improve sustainability in the cities, but mostly looking at an angle of urban agriculture. And that took us back again to climate change as an SDG, and looking at mapping our urban wastelands, wetlands, and trying to see how these are being used by city dwellers for urban agriculture. Then if we look at the next slide, we did again use the data sets and this system thinking to then start asking ourselves, what's the relationship between informality, youth, and employment? Mainly because you see, if I canceled informal economy, because in Zimbabwe, since the informality is about 90%, we tend to call it the economy. At the same time, an understanding of all these linkages led us to the realization that on the next slide, what we need in Zimbabwe is what we're terming a new approach, a systematic funding. The idea behind systematic funding is that now we're going back to the city and saying, realizing that Harare is highly informal in these complex dynamics that exist between SDGs. How about we try to come up with 3 pillars of focus areas. And from those 3 pillars, we can then use this systematic funding to try pull together investors who might be interested in any of those pillars, but we set up the pillars in such a way that they are entangled. And if you try to fund one pillar, you are indirectly or directly funding other pillars. And for every pillar, there are SDGs tied to it. So the main advantage for this is that for investors, you are de-risking your investment. So for us right now as a lab, we have 2 pools of funds. We have one fund coming from the private side. So we're asking private companies to state which of the nodes or pillars that they want to fund. We're also asking the public sector and NGOs to fund the other pool. And if you go on the next slide, you realize that we've picked 3 nodes or pillars that we've used to create our system fund. We have the first one, which is production. So we're looking at production and trying to address SDGs linked to poverty, hunger, and climate change by using climate smart technologies and really understanding the role that wetlands and urban agriculture play in ending urban hunger. Then the next one is data. Again, looking at sustainability and trying to create a value chain that empowers this informal system so that they use more data insights. And the last one is focused on research. So, so far we are working on this program and trying to combine funds coming from the private sector and the public sector to fund any of these 3. And in doing that, we ensure that we are having all the SDGs we identified are funded. Going to the next slide, just want to conclude by saying 3 key takeaways. The first one is that if you look at SDG interactions in a city framework, especially from an informal perspective, you see that the dynamics are highly complex. So I highly encourage all of you to consider this systems thinking and also the use of data analytics. And once you do that, then I also challenge you to consider this systematic funding approach. And I'll be more than happy to discuss in detail how to set up a systematic fund for funding a variety of SDGs, but using public funds and private funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Gift. Thank you so much for this insightful contribution. So I would like to ask you first a very concrete question. I think it was very interesting to see how SDG 2 has been leveraged, in terms of the planning at the city level to combat hunger. Maybe in terms of the financial planning, would you have an example also on how at the financial level this type of exercise has been done again at the city level in Harare?
Yeah, thanks. So I think two quick examples. The first one is looking at large scale. There's a program that UNDP Zimbabwe is doing called Safe Markets. And Safe Markets is leveraging from some of this work to say, if we're to build back better, where do we need to allocate more funding for infrastructure development? And we're noticing that by understanding how the funds that are being utilized at city scale tend to affect other SDGs, that's allowing the city to identify key areas to set up new markets. So of course they're trying to decongest markets, but at the same time also looking from a gender perspective to say what's the best utilization of funds to ensure that post-COVID the markets that are set up are more gender friendly. So I think right now there's Harare, Bulawayo, and Mtare. Those are the three cities that are benefiting from this work. Then the second one, I would say, looking from a systematic fund in trying to pull in a private sector to contribute towards the creation of a system that's taking informal knowledge and information and turning it into an index, I would say, or trying to call it a loan index that then unlocks funds for financial inclusion, trying to include other citizens within the city that are usually not able to gain loans from traditional banks, and then see how that then feeds into trying to tackle urban hunger and infrastructure in the city.
Thank you, Gift. So one more question, and I will ask you to answer in 1 minute if possible. It's a sort of fundamental question that we got from the audience. What are the accelerator labs and how are they funded? Maybe if you can tell, I know it's a difficult one to answer in 1 minute, but it'd be great if you can tell us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the idea behind the labs is UNDP recognized that the development environment is changing. So they said, let's come up with this network, a learning network that's funded by donors. I think our main donors is Qatar, Italy, and Germany. And they're working together to bring these funds to say, can we have one person per country who's focusing on experimentation, another one on solution mapping, trying to find out solutions in the country, and another role focusing on data and partnerships. And how can these three roles drive development at a faster pace? And the key thing is learning. Whatever happens in Zimbabwe or in Togo, in Kenya, we all share these outcomes every Tuesday. So in a nutshell, these are the labs. Yeah, just a huge learning network.
Perfect, Gift. That was 1 minute. Great elevator pitch for the accelerator labs. And thank you, Gift, for being with us today. We'll move on now to the fourth and last track of the session. It's the blue track, which focuses, as you all know by now, on the local for action hubs, which is an exciting initiative led by UCLG. And I'm sure most of you anyway are familiar with it. To tell us all about it, let me welcome Pilar Diaz, Deputy President and Delegate for International Relations at the Barcelona Provincial Government. Pilar has also been the mayor of Esplugues de Llobregat since 2006. It's a city I know well. I was born 20 kilometers from this city. And Pilar has also been a member of the regional parliament in Catalonia. Pilar, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Good morning, good afternoon, buenos días, buenas tardes a todos y a todas, alcaldes, alcaldesas y representantes de los gobiernos locales y regionales y las instituciones socias, yo diría en general, pues colegas, colleagues. En primer lugar, quiero agradecer a CGLUN, a la Asociación Italiana del Consejo de Municipios y Regiones de Europa, al Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo y a ONU Habitat, por la oportunidad que nos brindáis de poder participar en este evento. Celebro, aunque sea en este formato virtual y telemático que ya nos hemos habituado, celebro poder encontrarme de nuevo con muchos de vosotros, con muchas de vosotras, con los que desde la Diputación de Barcelona, la institución que represento, venimos colaborando desde hace tiempo para facilitar la transición hacia un mundo más sostenible, más resiliente, más justo, más igualitario y más inclusivo. En este marco, ahora presentaré los Local for Action Hubs, esta iniciativa que CGLU impulsa para visibilizar el rol transformador de las ciudades y los territorios y como elemento clave para potenciar la consecución real de los ODS. Visualizar los ODS en las ciudades para CGLU significa hacer visible los esfuerzos de implementación de estas agendas por parte de los gobiernos locales y regionales, es decir, localizarlas. Significa reconocernos más que nunca como la clave del éxito de la implementación de la Agenda 2030 y la consecución de los objetivos. Además, la actual pandemia ha puesto en perspectiva el papel crucial de los gobiernos locales como primeros agentes de respuesta y proveedores de soluciones. Más hemos respondido, yo diría bien y rápido, pero sobre todo rápido. Hemos sido los primeros en reaccionar. Reconociendo el poder transformador inherente a las acciones locales, la necesidad de fortalecer y ampliar la acción colectiva y la transformación hacia el cumplimiento de las agendas globales, la iniciativa Local for Action Hubs de CGLU celebra las prácticas y procesos desarrollados localmente y apoya su difusión, escalabilidad y replicabilidad para acelerar la localización de las agendas globales. La iniciativa Local for Action Hubs ancla la localización de las agendas globales en las prácticas locales, procesos e iniciativas innovadoras de los miembros, proporcionando la plataforma para inspirar, conectar, sincronizar y acelerar la entrega de las agendas globales. Proporciona visibilidad y una etiqueta, una marca de CGLU a las iniciativas ambiciosas y transformadoras de los gobiernos locales y regionales y sitúa así los enfoques locales de la sostenibilidad en la vanguardia de la conversación global. Gracias a las políticas y acciones públicas locales, especialmente en tiempos de crisis y de pandemia, la transformación que necesitamos para hacer de la Agenda 2030 una realidad, pues esto realmente puede tener lugar. A partir de la edición del año pasado, de 2020, el encuentro Venice City Solutions 2030 integra oficialmente el proceso de desarrollo de las iniciativas Local for Action Hubs de CGLU, convirtiéndose, nosotros diríamos y yo diría, en el hub de los hubs y en su punto de encuentro. Este espacio de interacción congregó en el 2020 y congregará anualmente las diversas soluciones y experiencias locales y regionales aportadas y desarrolladas por los Local for Action Hubs en un solo lugar, dando la posibilidad de una reflexión conjunta sobre lo que se hace desde las ciudades para implementar la Agenda 2030. De este modo, el encuentro de Venice City Solutions, que hoy estamos reportando, confirma a los Local for Action Hubs como una comunidad que fomenta el papel de los gobiernos locales y regionales en la implementación y configuración de las agendas globales y demuestra el compromiso claro de alcaldes y alcaldesas y gobiernos locales en general con esta hoja de ruta. Las primeras experiencias compartidas desde los Local for Action Hubs han abordado retos y proponen soluciones escalables para avanzar hacia las transformaciones y los compromisos solicitados por esas agendas globales. Desde el proyecto que impulsamos desde la Diputación para la igualdad de género, la juventud y la transformación intergeneracional, la cultura como cuarto pilar para el desarrollo sostenible, los valores compartidos y la co-creación de hojas de ruta hacia la sostenibilidad, la gobernanza abierta para la acción climática, la transformación social y urbana a través de la ecología, la recuperación basada en soluciones en la naturaleza o en la defensa de los servicios públicos. Yo pienso que todos y todas tenemos el objetivo de construir redes y alianzas para la localización de la Agenda 2030, precisamente teniendo en cuenta que el último objetivo es precisamente esa necesidad de alianzas. Las iniciativas han contado con la participación activa de diferentes ciudades y territorios como Xi'an, Roma, Bilbao, la provincia de Santa Fe, Buenos Aires, Cuenca, Leiden, Madrid, Pamsi, Aicre y también la propia Diputación de Barcelona. Y se encuentra trabajando con otras experiencias para ampliar esta comunidad. Cada una de estas iniciativas está generando un ecosistema de socios, de partners, ciudades, de actores alrededor de la experiencia local para transformarse en un proceso global de transformación replicable y escalable a nivel global, que es lo realmente importante, que eso después pueda ser también replicado y escalado. La iniciativa celebra y fomenta el compromiso de los actores del territorio para compartir sus procesos, sus innovaciones, sus conocimientos, aprovechar todo ese talento, impulsando la conexión local, global y las posibilidades de aceleración y sincronización de las acciones locales para asegurar un impacto más fuerte y sostenible desde el territorio. En este marco, la iniciativa de Local for Action Hubs de CGLU ha estado concretando líneas de trabajo a futuro para mejorar los medios de los gobiernos locales y regionales para la implementación de la Agenda 2030 y la iniciativa, sumando la fuerza de las experiencias locales, en este momento lo podría resumir en 3 elementos, 3 líneas. Una es identificar y potenciar nuevas experiencias que desde lo local estén impulsando acciones transformadoras para la implementación de la Agenda 2030. La segunda es promover la innovación como motor clave de los compromisos de aceleración de los gobiernos locales y regionales hacia la Agenda 2030. Y la tercera, reducir las desigualdades, asegurando un alcance inclusivo de la iniciativa para no dejar ningún territorio atrás, para no dejar a nadie atrás, por supuesto, y para fomentar los valores de solidaridad y equidad mediante una convocatoria específica a los países menos desarrollados. En nuestro caso, el reconocimiento como Local for Action Hub para nuestro proyecto Equalmed, que persigue la incorporación de la perspectiva de género en las políticas públicas locales y, en particular, la promoción de la participación política de las mujeres en la esfera local y territorial en Marruecos, representa una gran oportunidad para tejer vínculos, estrechar alianzas, conseguir compromisos y fortalecer la voluntad política para favorecer no solo un mayor empoderamiento de las mujeres, sino también unas sociedades más justas, más igualitarias y con muchísimo más potencial. Y esto lo conseguiremos a partir del trabajo que hacemos día tras día desde las administraciones locales, los verdaderos catalizadores de los procesos de transformación, no nos olvidemos nunca, para que mañana podamos vivir en un mundo mejor. En ese sentido, yo soy una genuina convencida de que los Local for Action Hubs de CGLU significan y significarán un revulsivo para capitalizar las acciones realizadas y para expandir esos objetivos a otras regiones del mundo. Las ciudades y los territorios tienen una posición única para identificar la problemática y las carencias vitales que nos permiten mejorar la prestación de los servicios públicos. Básicamente porque es que además que en muchas ocasiones conocemos directamente con el nombre y con el apellido a las personas con las que estamos trabajando. Y todo esto es muy necesario para involucrar a todos los actores en el diseño de políticas y estrategias de desarrollo y para abordar las desigualdades, poniendo las necesidades de las personas y las comunidades en el centro de las decisiones, en el centro de nuestras políticas, sin dejar a nadie ni a ningún lugar atrás. Sobre todo hacerlo visible ha sido el objetivo de la edición 2020. Para la edición 2021, la iniciativa Local for Action Hubs de CGLU continuará apoyando y trabajando en el marco del Venice City Solutions, como decía antes, como hub de hubs, dando un sentido unificado a los esfuerzos de los gobiernos locales y empoderando su voz y capacidades como actor único y necesario para la implementación sostenible de las agendas globales. Hagamos entre todas y todos que esta iniciativa, que abordamos con mucha ilusión, se transformen realmente en el catalizador hacia unas comunidades más sostenibles, más resilientes, más justas, igualitarias e inclusivas. Es importante siempre, y acabo, recordar que no podremos transformar de manera global ni podremos conseguir todos esos retos que nos marcamos si no impactamos y empezamos, yo diría, por la base, que son todos esos retos locales y esos impactos locales que proporcionamos desde los gobiernos locales. Pues a partir de aquí, muchas ganas de compartir muchas más cosas, pero sé que no tengo tiempo. Daros las gracias de nuevo. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, muchísimas gracias, Pilar. Si me lo permites, te voy a hacer una pregunta. Primero, felicitarte a ti, a toda la familia de CGLU por los Local for Action Hubs. Es realmente una iniciativa innovadora que conecta con iniciativas que antes compartíamos, desde los Accelerator Labs hasta la propia campaña de acción por los ODS, que trabajamos en red, que queremos innovar, que queremos trabajar con nuevos socios, socias, nuevas entidades. Es en ese sentido una iniciativa fantástica y le deseamos el mayor impacto, y desde aquí apoyaremos, por supuesto, con todo lo que podamos. Quería hacer una pregunta, Pilar, más en tu rol de alcaldesa, o sea, quizás más personal, ¿no? En tu experiencia, ¿cómo te han ayudado los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible? ¿Cómo ayudan los ODS a una alcaldesa, a un alcalde, a la hora de impulsar políticas públicas, de conectar con la ciudadanía, de generar una mayor implicación de los actores a nivel local? ¿Cuál ha sido tu experiencia? Me sabe mal porque solo tenemos un minuto y medio, pero Pilar.
Y esto daría para mucho más, pero me encanta más la pregunta. Hemos siempre intentado inspirarnos en cada una de nuestras acciones. Me gustaría poder tener tiempo para compartir como nuestro plan de actuación de todo el mandato de los 4 años. Cada una de sus acciones, de sus ejes, están inspirados en esos objetivos. Es decir, cada vez que nosotros, por decir algo, construimos un equipamiento o hacemos una actividad a nivel de los servicios sociales o de cultura o de deporte, cada vez que lo hacemos nosotros tenemos en este momento cuantificado cómo podemos contribuir a la consecución, al impacto y a la consecución de esos objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Creo que es muy importante alinear los planes estratégicos y también los planes de actuación de mandato con esos objetivos, porque al final esos objetivos de una manera muy sencilla nos dicen cómo tenemos que trabajar para conseguir vivir en un mundo más justo, en un mundo en el que las personas puedan ser más felices. Y para conseguir ese mundo más justo, más resiliente, como decíamos, más sostenible y sobre todo que las personas podamos ser más felices, tenemos que trabajar de manera muy decidida y además nos queda muy poco tiempo para conseguirlo. Y en nuestro caso, desde Esplugas, cuando empezamos en el mandato, este mandato se inició en el 2019, decidimos que cada una de las acciones, por grande o por pequeña que fuera, estaría alineada y enmarcada con los objetivos, y nosotros tenemos un cuadro de mando en el que cuantificamos cuál es el impacto de cada medida de las políticas locales en esa consecución, ya que no hay que olvidar, y con esto acabo, que el Comité de las Regiones aquí nos dijo hace ya un tiempo que el 66%, en un peso de 2 de cada 3, el 66% de la responsabilidad de la consecución de esos objetivos reside en la acción municipal.
Muchísimas gracias, Pilar. Thank you very much. I'm going to switch back to English. I think there was a nomination as you were speaking to appoint you world mayor.
Oh.
So we'll leave this out there. And,
Emilia, I know. Thank you very much.
and we also had, we'll close, we have a final question, which is a general question. So I would invite also Gift to jump in for that one. The question from the audience is there any existing strategic approach to assess the contribution of individuals towards achieving the SDGs? So Gift and Pilar, one or both.
Thank you. I can go first. So the question is there a way to assess individual contributions towards SDGs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quickly trying to think from an accelerator layer point of view. I know in Zimbabwe, we're trying to look into almost like learning passports, where you learn the material about SDGs, but at the same time, you almost like auto-rate yourself how you're doing. And by doing so, you can make a contribution, almost like so instead of NDCs, these are individual DCs, and then the system collects them and kind of shows you that for this region, this is how you're doing, or for this city, this is how you're doing as citizens and as an individual. That's how you're doing in response to what you're learning. So this is one innovation I can think of that we've mapped from an ACLab perspective in Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Thank you, Giv. Pilar, did you want to jump in? Yeah. So in 1 minute, please.
Si puede ser ya en 30 segundos. Sin la participación individual, yo estoy muy convencida que no vamos a conseguir esto. Ya sabíamos que era una gobernanza multinivel, tenemos la necesidad de los estados, de gobiernos regionales, de los gobiernos, por supuesto, locales, que ya hemos dicho que tenemos un papel muy importante, pero esto tiene que ser algo que salga de cada uno y de cada una. Y si esto no sale, esto no lo vamos a conseguir. Pero también tenemos un papel, como hay poco tiempo, tenemos un papel los gobiernos, y es en sensibilizar, hacer pedagogía, explicar que es que no hay otro camino, no way, es que no hay otro camino. Es imprescindible trabajar estos aspectos para que nos demos cuenta que nos jugamos mucho y que todas las personas tienen el derecho a vivir una vida digna y que este planeta es único y que no hay planeta B. Y con eso pues prácticamente ya está todo dicho. Y tenemos mucha faena no solamente en conseguir los objetivos, en localizarlos y conseguirlos, sino también trabajar con la ciudadanía y en hacer muchísima pedagogía y sensibilización.
Thank you so much, Pilar. That's a great closing for this segment. Let me just take a very quick minute to thank all the speakers again, all the host organizations, for this very, very insightful and inspiring conversation. And thank you to the audience. Thank you to all of you out there tuning in and engaging with this conversation. Let me also share a special thanks to my colleague, my dear colleague, Diana Lopez, who has been working tirelessly to bring us together. It has been a great pleasure for me to moderate this session. But don't go anywhere. We still have one last bit left. Let me turn now to, for this very last segment, to Carla Rey, the Secretary General of ICRE, which, as most of you know, is the Italian section of UCLG and one of the organizing partners of this event. We'll invite Carla to present the main findings of the Venice City Solutions Edition in 2020 and wrap up this session. Thank you, Carla. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Xavi. You were fantastic keeping the time. It's not easy to summarize shortly what has been discussed in 2 full days in Venice, but I'll do my best. So the recommendation to the HLPF can be summarized in 7 findings. Focus on the different facets of the visualizing the 2030 agenda in the cities. So the first is visualizing the 2030 agenda to recognize the localizing SDGs. In fact, localizing does not just mean transposing global goals into local actions, but ensuring that local actions shape the transformation to change the world. The current challenge is to accelerate and to synchronize the actions of different stakeholders learning and working together, and recognizing the local initiatives for their impact on international policy development. As Emilia said since the beginning of this session, with the globalization, local issues become global, and the global ones require local collective commitments and action. Second, visualizing the agenda to better understand the local dimension of the SDGs. Cities and territories have a unique position to identify vital needs and gaps, to improve the delivery of public services, and to involve all stakeholders in the design of development strategies. The experience and commitment of local authorities must be displayed and recognized for its key potential to drive transformation at all levels and for accelerating the implementation of the SDGs. Third point, visualizing the agenda as a common language between local governments and urban stakeholders. As was said, there are differences in language between different urban actors. The 2030 Agenda and the SDGs can provide a common language that connects the different territorial actors that have an impact both in the lives of citizens and in the global debate. Setting the SDGs as a common language will allow different stakeholders to understand each other, to connect the dots, to go beyond silos, and make sure that individual policies impact collective policies, and that the local reaches the global. 4 point, visualizing the agenda as a framework for functional partnership. To achieve good local governance and to advance on the transformative changes outlined by the 2030 Agenda, functional, horizontal and vertical partnership and between different territories must be promoted as a way to identify new correlations and new ways of working. The very nature of any city solution is showing how the relationship between the various stakeholders is fundamental to trigger the transformation we want. We need inclusive and participatory processes that involve all the society sectors. Fifth, visualizing the agenda to identify individual actions with collective and global impact. The multiplier effect of actions based on the SDGs is not only valid for public action, but for individual actions in the local community that contribute to the achievement of global sustainability. The challenge now is to move from collective impact to global. A false dichotomy has been identified between nature sustainability and people well-being. Platforms and spaces such as Venice City Solution 2030 and UCLG Local for Action hubs can be unique catalysts as leaders from all the sectors work together to define how to restart greener economies, how to redesign a resilient society, and to redefine democracy. 6 point, visualizing as an opportunity, even in time of crisis. The 2030 Agenda must be seen as a local tool within a post-COVID-19 crisis scenario to show how the SDGs are essential for rebuilding cities and rebuilding them better, with the aim of a more sustainable future. The SDGs offer visions and policies for resilient, fair local development to combat the structural urban inequalities that have been more exposed than ever by the COVID-19 pandemic, and to build a new social contract. The last point, visualizing the agenda to build a community based on shared values. In cities and territories, it is easy to identify the dimension of space and people, but often the immaterial aspect of the community that connects them is not even considered. In this perspective, it is urgent to redefine new models of consumption and production, to pay attention to the way in which efficiency and growth are defined, to truly understand the intangible and immaterial sense of the community, careful to leave nobody or no one behind. The community express key values such as social justice, cooperation, decentralization, gender equality, self-government, and accountability that are shared values of the 2030 Agenda. And this is to co-create a sustainable future for cities and territories. I think that that were the conclusions of our last edition. And from my side, I want to thank on behalf of ICRE Local for Action Hub, all the co-organizers that makes Venice City Solution our common platform of exchange. And also all the participants for their contributions to our discussion. And I really hope to see you all for the next edition in November of Venice City Solution. Thank you, Xavi. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you all. We are really a great team, and Venice is really growing inside the Local for Action Hub family. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you all for joining us today in this event. Thank you, UCLG, for this wonderful production, all the team that is behind the scenes doing that. This is fluffy and animated and wonderful. So just stay in line. This session is over, but there is the next session organized by UCLG and UNDESA called Accelerating Local Action. So there is going to be like a couple of minutes between one session and the next, but please do not disconnect. Stay with us. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, dear colleagues, to this accelerating local action session that we are hosting in collaboration with UNDESA, and United Cities and Local Governments is really very pleased to have you with us. Today is the second day for local and regional governments constituency during the high-level political forum of the United Nations in New York. And we are still facing a very difficult crisis. Local and regional governments and their representatives have been, for the past year, very much at the forefront of the efforts to overcome this very trying time. In this crisis that we are facing through the COVID pandemic, we have also seen the intrinsically link that there is between local service provision and the overall agenda of safety, health systems, and sustainability. How important local action is to protect the people, to protect the planet, and how local and regional sustainability policies can be really critical, not only to preserve our communities, to improve their livelihoods, but also to ensure that we trigger a type of transformation toward resilience and sustainability that is really based on the needs and the aspirations of the citizens. United Cities and Local Governments has put in place an initiative that we call the Local for Action Hubs, which is meant to both trigger local action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, but also showcase those activities that local and regional governments were already putting in place. They were already doing it, but that they did not connect necessarily with the global agenda. Now, this is a rather new initiative. We have been working on this for a long year, and the responses have been really significant. We have many activities that we want to showcase to you. The most important part is also that we really feel this is part and parcel of the efforts that the international community is making. And this is why our collaboration with UNDESA, with UNDP, with UN Habitat in this endeavor is so relevant. We just finished a session around these partnerships, these multi-stakeholder partnerships, and we're going to focus now on the things that happen at the local level themselves. So I'm very happy to give the floor for opening remarks to Carola Gunnarsson, the mayor of Sala, but also Vice President of UCLG for Europe. Carola, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emilia, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank for this event within the framework of the High-Level Political Forum for Sustainable Development. It is a pleasure and an opportunity for me to be in this space on behalf of United Cities and Local Governments to reiterate our commitment as the constituency of local and regional governance with the global agendas for a sustainable and inclusive development, especially now at the time of the recovery. As the decade of action starts, there is a wide consensus from the global community that the localization of the global agendas will happen in the cities. Cities and territories hold the best opportunities to reinforce strategies and to achieve the transformation needed for a sustainable planet. Localization is more than ever recognized as the key to the successful implementation of the Agenda 2030 and the achievement of the SDGs. Furthermore, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has put into perspective the crucial role of local and regional governments as first responders and providers of solutions. The constituency of local and regional governments share the urgency to continue to act, to cooperate, and to support sustainable living for all, and have thus taken the 2030 Agenda and the 17 SDGs as the roadmap for action to translate them into the territory. Recognizing the transformative power inherent in local actions, the need to strengthen and scale up collective action and transformation towards the fulfillment of the global agenda, the United Cities and Local Governments Local for Action Hubs initiative celebrates the efforts developed locally, experiences, practices, and processes, and support their visibility, scalability, and replicability to accelerate the localization of global agendas. UCLG's Local for Action Hubs initiative anchors the localization of global agendas in members' local practices, processes, and innovative initiatives, providing the platform to connect, synchronize, and accelerate the delivery of global agendas. It provides visibility and a UCLG global label recognizing valuable and transformative local and regional government experiences, placing local approaches to sustainability at the forefront of the global conversation. Thanks to local public policies and actions, especially in times of crisis and COVID-19 pandemics, the transformation we need to make Agenda 2030 a reality can take place. After the success of the first edition of the Local for Action Hubs initiative, looking at how the 13 local experiences are showing and manifesting the strong commitment of local governments to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda through scaling up and making available their solutions for other cities of the world, we have decided to make this process even more inclusive and accessible. In this spirit, the UCLG Local for Action Hubs initiative has been concretizing new lines of work to improve the means of local and regional governments for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The initiative, adding the strength of local experiences, seeks to, firstly, identify and enhance new experiences that from the local level are driving transformative actions for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Secondly, promote innovation as a key driver of local and regional governments' acceleration commitments towards the 2030 Agenda. And thirdly, reduce inequalities, ensuring an inclusive scope of the initiative to leave no territory behind and promote the values of solidarity and equity through a specific call to the least developed countries. Cities and territories are uniquely positioned to identify vital needs and gaps, to improve public service delivery, to involve all stakeholders in the design of development policies and strategies, and to address inequalities, putting the needs of people and communities at the center, leaving no one and no place behind. In this session, we want to focus on the accelerative power of visionary local actions to localize the Sustainable Development Goals, triggering a transformative and multiplier effect with an impact on global policies and dynamics. We want to generate an open dialogue between different stakeholders on the acceleration led by local actions on the global policies and dynamics. The local for action hubs are showing why their initiative is aiming at accelerating the 2030 agenda and how the partners are key to this process.
Thank you very much, Vice President. How we accelerate the agenda and how important the partners are for this process. And something that is very critical for us all is as well to have that local action recognized by the international community. And that's why we are so excited and why we have held this special and formal side event of the high-level political forum as part of the acceleration action platform that UN has put together, UNDESA. Because very often we see that many of the good things that are happening at the local level are not really recognized by the international community. They are not part and parcel of their discussions. And so they can also not be seen as part of the solution if they are not part of the discussion. Luckily, this is improving, and the space that we are gaining during the high-level political forum, for instance, is larger and larger every year. We've got around 10 formal side events this year that we are organizing as constituency. That is a drastic increase if we compare it to previous years. And there is a formal session on local action today, where some of our political representatives are going to be. So I would like now to go to Elkin Velázquez, the director of the Office for Latin America and the Caribbean of UN Habitat, a good friend. We have gone through this road together. We have felt the pains of not having the local approaches recognized, but we have also seen the good news, how this is changing and how it is improving. So I couldn't think of a better person, Elkin, to share with us your vision on the importance of local action and how these kind of initiatives that we are promoting together, including, for instance, the voluntary local reviews and the voluntary subnational reviews, can actually make a difference, not only in the speed that we reach the agendas with, but also in the type of action that we choose to tackle as international community. So Elkin, thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Please just a quick check of my sound. Please confirm that you can hear me well. Perfect. Thank you very much, in addition for your generous words. On behalf of UN Habitat, I would like to share with you some messages about how are we seeing the future, because we are here today, ladies and gentlemen, I think, to confirm what has been done in the world in terms of the positive contribution from local governments to this movement of implementing the global agendas, but also to see how we can do better, because the world needs that we all do better. At this very moment, as you were mentioning, Emilia, the question is not if we need local governments. We know that we need them. It is not about the what to do from the local perspective, because we know by now that the majority of SDGs and indicators that we are following up have a territorial and local expression. We know that. It's not about that. It's more about the how. It's more about how this local action can indeed contribute to accelerating the impact. And I think the key word here is going to be, for all of us, impact. How do we increase the impact regarding the local action? And in this how, of course, we need to think and reflect how to adapt to the uncertainty. We are, going through very interesting times with a lot of uncertainty. uncertainty, and we need really in the how to come up with methodologies of work at the local level that can deal with this uncertainty. We also have to say and to reinforce and to highlight the perspective of the integration. Nothing better, as we know by now, than the action at the local level to come with this idea of the integrated intervention, the integrated implementation of the global agendas. Some have even mentioned the idea of working by combos, by packages, and this is a way forward. And we are here also to support this with good examples. We are also here to think about the how on how do we support better? How do we mobilize more support to local stakeholders, to local governments, to subnational governments? And it is about the means of implementation. It is about capacities. We know that by now we know very much about very important cities that have advanced with the BLRs, that have very well advanced with the monitoring and with good examples of implementation. I think we need to be more ambitious, and we need to really have as an objective to reach all local governments in the world to be able to take their part in the implementation of the global agenda from this very local perspective. And it is about financing. I think it's going to be discussed, it's being discussed, this aspect of the financing during this high-level political forum from different perspectives. And I think the local perspective of financing is critical so that we can support much more the local authorities to advance in this perspective. If we are able to do this, if we are able really to go beyond the, let me say, all the friends of the local action, and we are able to convince those development partners that having had so far the opportunity to look at the good impacts that we can see when a mayor, when a local community are empowered and supported to advance in this implementation, I think we will be able to go to scale. And the most important question for the end of my intervention is the why. Why we are doing all this? Of course, it is about having impact, concrete impact. By now, we are saying, when we observe this very important movement outside, for instance, from private sector, from philanthropies on social impact investments, that there is no better way to measure this social impact than doing it through the SDGs and doing it at the very local level. There is a very important opportunity there to increase the impact. And the exchange that we will have here, the experiences that you will share, I think will give us additional elements to go outside and convince more development partners, financing partners to support local action. At the end of the day, also because this is the only way, the proximity to really advance with the proposal and the message from our Secretary General, the need to go towards a new social contract. That happens in the proximity, that happens at the very local level. And a final word from my own region that needs to happen in Latin America and the Caribbean, where we are going through a moment of social unrest, mainly expressed by youth. That has to happen very much with the youth also at the center of this process. And nothing better than the local governments, the local leaders that you are to really engage with youth, as we need at this very moment for the future of Latin America and the Caribbean. But I think this is also valid for other regions of the world. Emilia and friends, thank you very much. All the best in these conversations. We look forward to continue learning a lot from the good experiences that are being developed, again, with the aim to really advance towards scaling up and accelerating. All the best today in the conversations.
Thank you very much, Elkin. Thank you for joining us today, but above all for the work that you do in our dear Latin American region with our membership over there, a trying period for that region as well. And I really like what you have brought to the discussions about our level of ambition. That it cannot be only small groups of cities that we know are capable of doing a lot. We need many other cities to come on board. I am afraid that the examples that we're going to showcase today come from very symbolic global cities, cities like Madrid and Xi'an and Cuenca. But our ambition is exactly to make the hubs available as a concept for big and small all over the world, and also to show that what they already do is good enough, that what they already do can actually trigger transformation if it is treated in that way, if the right resources, if the right people are put around it. So thank you for those thoughts. A wonderful introduction panel, I would say, and I am now very pleased to give the floor to my colleague Salim Kormaz. He is the coordinator of our office in Istanbul of the UCLG MEWA section. Salim is one of these champions that has been trying to bring in the movement around the SDGs in that very complex region. It's not easy to talk about development agendas when you are in a region that is so affected by heavy conflict, by armed conflict, by very serious challenges. They always remind us of that. But something wonderful is happening. I don't know if you agree with me, Salim. It's happening in these recent years. We are seeing more and more of our members in that region really being very active in localization of the Sustainable Development Goals, embracing the goals, developing voluntary local reviews. The movement is working. So I'm really happy that you're going to be sharing with us some of those experiences, why you facilitate the next segment on the local for action hubs and recovery, with a very interesting panel that is going to be talking about equality and solidarity driven issues and actions. Salim, dear friend, thank you for joining us, for taking up the challenge. The floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Emilia. I hope you can hear me. Yes. So, yeah, I was going to already mention that actually, but I can start with that. In my region, the MEWA region, Middle East and West Asia, like you said, it's a very challenging region with many issues, both economic and social and etc. and political, of course. But indeed, among our membership in this region, we have been trying to promote the SDG agenda a lot. And we try to tell our members that regardless of what your challenges are, SDGs are relevant for your problems. So I think we managed to mobilize many cities in our region. Of course, we started with Turkish cities, which is relatively more stable country in the region. So 3 Turkish cities are already submitting their VLRs this year for the first time. And these are the first VLRs not only in the MEWA region, but also in the whole Central Asia. And you know, it's covering a huge region. When you see on the map, there has never been a city in this huge part of the world which has prepared their VLRs, and it shows that they were less interested in SDG agenda until this year. But yes, recently they are more and more interested, and they are doing much more work on VLRs. And I think during this HLPF, you will be able to hear more about their VLRs. So to start with this part of the session, first of all, I would like to welcome everyone, of course, for participating in this side event, which is co-organized by UCLG and UNDISA. And this session is more about accelerating the local action. And like you said, it's framed around recovery. Before I give the floor to the panelists, I will give some brief introduction, because the word accelerating has become much more relevant with this COVID-19 pandemic. I suppose you will agree with me. Because as you all know, with the pandemic, we are lagging behind the desired level of achievements in many of the SDGs, and it's also reflected in the UN reports too. For example, in SDG 1, we see that the global poverty rates have been increasing, and it's for the first time in many decades. So we are losing a lot of time with this COVID-19, and we are only 9 years away from the 2030 threshold, and we really need to accelerate our actions. And that's why I think the local for action hubs are important. And we are already in the decade of action, and we see more and more local governments around the world are engaging more in SDG localization activities. And they are cooperating with their national governments, international organizations, to share responsibilities between the national and local level. And they are working more to ensure and achieve sustainable development. And to showcase their efforts, they are preparing their VLRs and sharing it with the global community. As I've already mentioned, in our region, we are also seeing more synergy in this as well. And we believe that VLRs are really instrumental in mobilizing all the local stakeholders in a city or in a town to achieve localization of the global agendas. So we will be continuing supporting our cities in these efforts as well. But today we will be hearing some more concrete initiatives from 3 different cities, and we will have some international organization representatives. We will hear the cities of Xi'an, Madrid, and Cuenca. They will be presenting their local for action hubs, and they want to set a model for other cities to follow. And then we will have 2 more panelists from international organizations, like I've said, and my colleague Firdaus Osidium from UCLG World will be taking the rest of the session, and she will be moderating that part. So I would like to start with the example of SDG acceleration from the city of Madrid. Santiago Saura, the Counselor for International Affairs from Madrid, is with us. Madrid will soon be launching a local for action hub, and it's focusing on recovery. So Mr. Saura, can you tell us about your hub more and how it will serve achievement of SDG 3 and 13? Please, the floor is yours.
Sí, buenas tardes, ¿me escucháis bien? May I speak in Spanish, or otherwise I can switch to English? Is Spanish fine? Perfect. Hablaré entonces en español con su permiso. Bueno, en primer lugar, muchas gracias por invitar a la ciudad de Madrid a participar en este evento dentro del High Level Political Forum, a CGLU, a ONU, a NUDESA y UNDESA, y bueno, pues a todos los presentes, a Emilia, y por organizar esta sesión y ponernos a trabajar, ¿no? Previamente yo voy a presentar parte de nuestros proyectos para este ámbito tan importante que son los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible y en concreto la localización, ¿no? La localización de estos retos que compartimos todas las ciudades y todos los gobiernos locales en torno a la implementación y aceleración de la Agenda 2030 en nuestros ámbitos, ¿no? Madrid ya ha aprobado su estrategia de localización de los ODS, que consta de 104 metas locales y 160 indicadores para dar seguimiento y monitoreo a esas metas locales de aquí al año 2030. Es una estrategia que se ha realizado con la participación de todas las áreas de gobierno, organismos autónomos y empresas públicas municipales, y que también ha contado con las aportaciones de la sociedad civil en general en el ámbito del conjunto de la ciudad, que han realizado aportaciones sobre una versión inicial de esta estrategia y que ha permitido incorporar nuevas metas e indicadores a la misma. Lógicamente, esta estrategia pues, incluye un conjunto de acciones y de objetivos muy amplios en todos los ODS, en los 16 de los 17 ODS en el caso de la Ciudad de Madrid, y sí que tenemos algunos proyectos bandera, y en particular uno de ellos fue el que seleccionamos para proponer como Local for Action Hub por parte de Madrid, que es el proyecto del bosque metropolitano. Es un proyecto basado, digamos, en la renaturalización urbana, basado en las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza y en la infraestructura verde, que es el concepto que subyace al proyecto que presentamos a este Local for Action Hub. En concreto, ¿qué es el bosque metropolitano? Bueno, el bosque metropolitano es un gran proyecto de infraestructura verde que completará un anillo de 75 kilómetros alrededor de la ciudad de Madrid, compuesto por bosque, por especies forestales autóctonas, que va a tener el objetivo de generar un corredor ecológico y social que conecte zonas verdes y forestales y zonas naturales que ya existen en el municipio de Madrid, pero que en su gran mayoría están, digamos, aisladas, dispersas, separadas unas de otras. Con este proyecto pretendemos generar esa continuidad ecológica y social en torno al conjunto de la ciudad de Madrid y vertebrar también territorialmente la ciudad. Son más de 450.000 árboles en un proyecto de 10 años de trabajo que va a incorporar tanto la parte urbanística como la parte puramente, digamos, de plantación y de revegetación de esas zonas, como también la parte de infraestructuras como ecoductos o puentes verdes para salvar la continuidad del puente, que puedan salvar algunas de las infraestructuras de comunicación que penetran en la ciudad de Madrid y que puedan, con esos ecoductos, el bosque metropolitano contar con esa continuidad que deseamos y esa conectividad que deseamos para el proyecto. Los beneficios que buscamos con este proyecto, y por eso lo hemos seleccionado para el Local for Action Hub, son múltiples y son transversales. Evidentemente, la pandemia nos ha puesto de manifiesto cómo de importante es el espacio público de calidad, las zonas verdes, las zonas disponibles en la proximidad de los barrios y de los distritos de la ciudad, y este proyecto precisamente tiene esa vocación de mejora del espacio público, de proveer de zonas verdes de calidad, con un grado de naturalidad suficiente y que estén distribuidas de manera equitativa por toda la ciudad. El anillo rodea toda la ciudad y provee de zonas verdes en ese proyecto a todo el conjunto de los ciudadanos, especialmente en barrios periféricos que tradicionalmente han concentrado menos inversiones que las zonas centrales de las ciudades en general, y también en algunas zonas de la ciudad, como la zona del sureste de la ciudad, que son zonas con algún menor grado de desarrollo en algunos ámbitos y también con menor disponibilidad de zonas verdes. Con este proyecto buscamos ese reequilibrio y esa cohesión territorial en el ámbito de la ciudad de Madrid. Además, obviamente, estamos proporcionando oportunidades de ocio, de recreo, de descanso, en definitiva una fuente de salud, una fuente de calidad de vida para todos los ciudadanos. Y además también esa planificación que afecta también a la planificación urbanística proveerá una revalorización de los barrios y de los entornos que se beneficien de ese anillo, de ese corredor, de ese bosque metropolitano, que además son algunos de ellos zonas relativamente degradadas que se van a ver mejoradas sustancialmente con esta inversión, con este proyecto. Además de todo ello, los beneficios, digamos, estrictamente ambientales, si queréis, del bosque, pues son evidentes en términos de biodiversidad, y también son otros beneficios múltiples en el ámbito de la absorción de CO2, que vinculan muy directamente con la hoja de ruta de descarbonización que tiene la ciudad de Madrid para estos años, de aquí al 2030, en el que ambicionamos a reducir un 65% las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero respecto a las del año 1990, con múltiples acciones de movilidad, de rehabilitación energética de viviendas, etcétera, pero también aquellas que inciden sobre la naturalización de la ciudad. Entonces es un proyecto que afecta a múltiples ODS, obviamente al ODS 11 de ciudades sostenibles, comunidades sostenibles, al ODS 13 de acción por el clima, al 15 de vida en ecosistemas terrestres, biodiversidad, también al ODS 3 de salud y bienestar, y también al de las alianzas, porque es un proyecto que queremos y estamos desarrollando no solo desde el ayuntamiento como entidad municipal en sí, sino con el conjunto de la ciudad, a través de mecanismos de participación ciudadana y de colaboración público-privada. Por ejemplo, con las empresas estamos ya colaborando para que esas empresas, a través de sus programas de responsabilidad social corporativa y de compensación de emisiones, inviertan y aporten parte del desarrollo de este proyecto. Además, el proyecto, por ir acabando, simplemente indicar que se está desarrollando a través de un concurso internacional de ideas con equipos multidisciplinares que han aportado todos los aspectos del diseño del proyecto, desde la vegetación, paisaje, infraestructuras de ocio y recreo, los ecoductos que he mencionado anteriormente, y que bueno, ha sido un jurado compuesto no solo por el ayuntamiento, como digo, sino por colegios profesionales, universidades, asociaciones de vecinos, asociaciones de personas con discapacidad, que han valorado las propuestas en 5 ámbitos espaciales y que ya están seleccionadas las finalistas y las ganadoras con las que estamos trabajando en este ámbito para desarrollar los proyectos específicos en cada subparte o subsección de este gran anillo forestal en el que estamos trabajando en Madrid. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Saura. I think the many cities in the world will be prioritizing the reshaping or redesigning the metropolitan spaces and public space. So I think it will be interesting for many cities in the world as well. Thank you for sharing your initiative, and I would like to continue with the second speaker, and he will be also presenting his city's initiative. Is Mr. Wei Weiyong. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. He's the Deputy Division Chief of International Exchange and Cooperation at Xi'an Yutong University. And this hub will be on cultural diversity. And let us hear Mr. Weiyong and his initiatives relation with SDG 4, 8, and 17. Please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Salim. Can you hear me? Just test of sound. Okay, good. All right, thank you, Salim. Thank all of you for inviting us to participate in this event. Dear colleagues and friends, first of all, I would like to extend my appreciation to those who have contributed to today's meeting. During the decades of action, Local for Action hubs provide a unique platform for people to better comprehend the 2030 agenda and implement the SDGs at the local level with innovative experience. Xi'an Jiaotong University, together with the Xi'an Municipal Government, has further promoted sustainable development for young people in education and dialogue. We totally agree that the innovation is the driving force to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. The future belongs to the young people, who is the main power of innovation. And the hopes also rest with them. As one of the top universities, it is our responsibility to create a sound environment for their sustainable development and capacity building. Education equality should be guaranteed that young people's capacity of addressing challenges can be better fostered. International perspective should be cultivated that young people's involvement in global agenda can be deepened. Intercultural exchanges and cooperation should be enhanced. That young people's international circle of friends can be expanded. Through the Local for Action Hub, our initiative has been synchronized with many universities and colleges around the world. We believe when facing the common challenges, no one can survive alone. And seeking harmony and coexistence is the only way out. Xi'an is a city with rich culture and education resources. In 2020, Xi'an has increased its investment in education with 1.5 billion yuan to promote education equity and diversity. To accelerate education informatization, all the primary and secondary schools have realized broadband internet connection, and 96% of the classroom have multimedia equipment. Besides, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have built an online learning platform for students with more than 400 million pages views. Thanks to that, Youth Education and Dialogue Hub, which contributes to the SDG 4, 5, 8, and 17 will promote young people's development through 3 programs. First, I would like to introduce the program one by one. We have designed education training program for young officials to deepen cooperation and communication among the UCLG aspect members and to drive the prosperous growth of the Asia-Pacific region. It will be a platform for young officials to engage in dialogues and exchanges, improve the governance capabilities, share the development experience, and promote exchanges and cooperation among the local and regional governments. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have extended this program and hope more young officials can be involved in this program. Second, we are designing sustainable development courses for college students. Through the international partners of the Xi'an Jiaotong University, we hope to jointly build up a high-quality SDG training system. After its completion, the final modules will be circulated through Global University Alliance with more than 400 members. And the concept of sustainable development can be quickly spread through the global networks. Third, we will hold a global youth leadership training program on 10th to 12th of August with the theme of urban governance modernization and sustainable urban development, and a high-level youth dialogue forum for sharing urban governance practice and cases in the topics of poverty alleviation, big data, ecological civilization, and so on. We hope the understanding and consensus can be summoned. Proposals can be made and heard, and dialogue mechanism can be built for young officials from different backgrounds so that their local governance capacity can be cultivated to better serve the people. Registration will start soon, and you are welcome to participate in this program to communicate and exchange ideas with the young officials from all over the world. Dear friends, peace and development are still the theme of our times, and openness and inclusiveness are the spirit of Xi'an. I hereby call on everyone to join hands together with Xi'an for a better world that leaves no one and no place behind. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hueyong, for your remarks and for your speech and sharing this help with us. It's very nice to see this strong cooperation between the university and the municipality, and thank you for coordinating this work. And our third local for action hub is from Latin America, from Ecuador, Mr. Fabian Ledesme, again a difficult name, but Ledesme from Cuenca municipality will be telling us about their hub on civic education. And please, Mr. Ledesme, tell us how your hub accelerates SDG localization.
Gracias. Para nosotros es un placer poder compartir con ustedes en este foro que está dentro del marco de la Agenda 2030. Voy a ser un poco específico en poder comentar ciertos proyectos que estamos manejando y especialmente me voy a concentrar en las ODS 11, 16 y 17. Con respecto a las ODS 11, pues buscamos fortalecer los procesos participativos de la planificación urbana y posicionar los enfoques sostenibles de estos problemas propios, como por ejemplo la movilidad. En este sentido, pues la ciudad de Cuenca y el gobierno local lo que pretende es de alguna manera poder invitar a los ciudadanos y especialmente en poder crear una nueva cultura de movilidad. Y si bien es cierto, hemos podido notar que diferentes países de todo el mundo y diferentes ciudades tienen el problema de la movilidad en función de que las tendencias, al menos locales, es poder ir desplazando paulatinamente el uso del vehículo. Creemos importante que debemos prepararnos justamente para poder cuidar el medio ambiente de nuestra ciudad. En este contexto, se han plantado algunos proyectos que tienen que ver con la movilidad urbana específicamente, y de hecho tenemos un tema integral, porque esto no solamente tiene que ver con el diseño de estos entes que permiten la movilidad, sino también tiene que ver con el sustento y el apoyo de la política pública. Si bien es cierto, Cuenca ha determinado que es ya el momento de poder tener proyectos como, por ejemplo, camineras en los diferentes parques, las ciclovías, los proyectos como la bici pública, y también un sistema alternativo de movilidad que no utilice los derivados de hidrocarburos, sino más bien que tienda al uso de la energía eléctrica. Esto es un tema novedoso para nuestra ciudad, y también la posibilidad de proyectar un Cuenca diferente, un Cuenca que se proyecte al futuro. Realmente estamos monitoreando todo el tiempo los niveles de contaminación de nuestra ciudad, producto justamente por el uso del vehículo automotor. En este sentido, pues es importante que continuemos y que tengamos ese apoyo desde la parte ciudadana, las organizaciones sociales y también, por supuesto, la empresa privada. Estamos trabajando continuamente y de hecho en este momento se están ejecutando algunos de estos proyectos. Creemos importante que nosotros también podemos llegar en nuestro centro o casco urbano de la ciudad, que pensamos que pronto, en los meses que vienen, pues vamos a desarrollar también proyectos como la ciudad o el ciclo, en este caso, de poder plantear la movilidad en la parte urbana. Es decir, queremos que el proyecto de las supermanzanas, que se llama o se denomina de esta manera, nos va a permitir precisamente bajar esa afluencia o esa cantidad de vehículos que visitan o que circulan por la parte central de la ciudad. Para un poco optimizar el tiempo de mi intervención, también quiero hacer referencia de algunos temas importantes, como son las ODS 16, en donde damos lugar a los presupuestos participativos de algunos gobiernos locales que tienen que ver con el Cantón Cuenca. Es interesante de que en aquella autonomía que tienen los GATS parroquiales, y específicamente creemos que el desarrollo todavía no ha llegado a la medida que aspiramos nosotros con aquellos gobiernos pequeños que no tienen la posibilidad de plantear algunos proyectos. Sin embargo, el gobierno local, en este caso el GAT municipal de Cuenca, pues tiene la intención, y de hecho lo está haciendo, en poder participar con recursos para aquellos, y no solamente en este sentido, sino también ser el ente asesor que pueda guiar las mejores prácticas para una mejor planificación. Y finalmente, con respecto a las ODS 17, pues hemos estado trabajando continuamente en poder tener la posibilidad de que enlazarnos y tener nuevas experiencias con diferentes países y específicamente con nuevas ciudades. En este año, precisamente en los primeros meses, tuvimos la oportunidad de realizar hermanamientos con ciudades de Estados Unidos, México, y aspiramos pronto tener hermanamientos con ciudades de Europa. Esto pretende y consigue justamente este intercambio de experiencias que tiene que ver con el turismo, la reactivación económica, la identidad, la cultura y temas ambientales. Muchísimas gracias por el tiempo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ledesma. And thank you for sharing this hub with us. And I also believe that your city and the Middle Eastern and West Asian cities also have a lot to share with you, and you can share with them, because we hosted your city in a VLR session in our region, and it was very interesting. I think many challenges are similar between your region and our region. So we would be pleased to hear more about your initiatives later in our MEWA meetings as well. So that was it from me for now. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Osidium from UCLG. So she will take the rest of the session.
Thank you, Selim, and congratulations to the local for action hubs that we have been listening. We are always excited from the World Secretariat of UCLG to listen to the local for action hubs, where they are, how they are advancing, how it is being developed, and how really local action is being given great visibility through the efforts that are being done. We have heard Madrid is accelerating through a specific participatory approach for ensuring a green and inclusive recovery. We have heard Xi'an accelerating through culture, training youth, and the education. We have heard Cuenca accelerating through trainings and sensitizing citizenship, so that individuals can take their own responsibility in implementing the agenda and ensuring a sustainable world. I would like now to go to two key partners of UCLG. The first one is Johannes Kratzinzer, coordinator of UNDP Arts Initiative. Johannes, you have been part of the local experience, not one, but many. You have been one of the first partners that did join this local for action hub initiative. And also we know that you have been supportive of the local action for a long time. You are great believers in local actors. How do you think this kind of initiatives can be accelerators of implementation of the global agendas? Johannes, please tell us.
Well, first of all, many thanks, Firdaus, for inviting me on behalf of UNDP and for giving me the opportunity to once more listen to these very good examples, and also seeing how the examples of the local action hubs are really evolving. I mean, I don't think it's any secret. I mean, you know, and on many of the colleagues that are listening, that we in UNDP really think that the local action hubs are a great initiative, showcasing innovation capacity of cities, regions, creating networks, sharing the experience, more so even in COVID times. But let me reflect shortly, because how can they become more impactful and really accelerators? I want to think a little bit about the governance structures and what we could do maybe. I mean, my assumption is the initiative will be more impactful. First, the more hubs will join. Second, the better they are connected and linked. And third, the more they're integrated with the wider and different systems of institutions aiming at the same objectives of localizing the SDGs. And maybe it's the last one where I want to stay a little bit. No, today we're dealing with development problems that are highly complex, and that we are looking to tackle into an integrated manner. So that means integrating levels, sectors, different partners. Solving such complex or wicked development challenges require networks of great heterogeneity and a strong level of social capital between the members that are there in this network, in order to really effectively have collaborative processes. So the social capital between the different members, and that is not only now the local for action hubs, but also then with the others that I really would argue that it's very important, this integration with the UN system, the integration with civil society networks, academic networks, and so on. So we need to build these social capitals and the trust that really these kind of different partners could work together in the different environments on the different levels for the collective outcomes and common goals. As we are here in the HLPF, I would like to continue a little bit there. The need to integrate the local for action hubs within the UN systems. I think there is a huge potential that we have, but we need to look at it in in a differentiated manner, because there needs to be integration at all different levels. There need to be integration at the territorial and local level. That would mean, for example, if I stick to the example of UNDP, with the UNDP country offices, there need to be integration at national, and there need to be integration at the global level. For example, the new alliance of 2030, which would be an excellent example where we could look at it. But if we think about what is needed, because it's not just that there are innovative ideas and all the actors would be by themselves, or the network of local for action hubs. We need to see how we can really best stimulate the collaboration between these innovative networks in an intelligent, in a smart way. So if you allow me to go back a little bit to the network governance theory, it's all about shared values, visions, and objectives that foster the achievement of these desirable outcomes that we have. So it's about this, creating this shared value. And one way to do this is through a collaborative visioning process that could foster these shared visions and this strategic alignment between the network actors. I'm saying this because I do think these events that we're doing, and where we are very often participating, is part of that kind of like creating this shared vision. But we also need to see that we're creating this shared vision at all different other levels and with different other partners. So we need to become a bit more inclusive there, and to see how we can really pull this off. No, I think once we recognize that today's development challenges are complex and wicked, we need to find ways to improve this collaboration. And I do think the first step is even the creation of such a local for action networks. But then the next step is really then how do we do this institutional brokering and fostering of these desirable network structures and practices that allow us to better work together. I mean, it is, however we put it, but a UN agency has a different culture of operating than has a network of cities. And I know we are coming closer and closer together, definitely at the global level, definitely with our visions, but it really needs some work that we think of the different levels if we go down to the territory. And it's a good example. We're working together with two of the examples as UNDP, as long and excellent partners with Madrid, as well as with Cuenca. I'm not sure that everyone in UNDP knows that these kind of poles are really now part of the local for action network, and that there is much more behind than the single experiences. So I think it's something we, and also invitation to Habitat, because Habitat is in the future chairing the local 2030 Alliance. We are co-chairing it as UNDP, and I think that is really a possibility to integrate these excellent initiatives and make it also operationally integrated in with our networks that we organize, or that we manage, that we work with at the local level, at the national, and at the global level. That, I think, is the challenge that we have in front of us. It's time to seriously discuss these governance arrangements, valuing thereby the great effort and the huge potential of UCLG's network of local for action hubs. I will leave it there, and thanks a lot again for the invitation, Fidaus.
Well, it is our pleasure to listen to you each time, Johannes, and I agree with you. You know, inside of the team in the World Secretariat, but also with the teams of the cities, we are always talking about what happened before the experience to be achieved and to be successful. And of course, always there are challenges. There is a story behind each of the hubs, and there is a story behind each of the experiences. And this is part of what we would love to bring at the forefront and to make visible. It's not only about one-shot action. It is about managing communities. It is about getting the communities on board. And as you say, the governance alignment is very important. I love also what you have told about the culture of operating. We have been talking about synchronization. We have been talking about alignment between institutions and between actions. And the culture of operating is a key one to ensure, to enhance, and to improve this governance potentials and challenges. So thank you very much, Johannes, and we keep your recommendations on board with us. Thank you so much. And talking about the story of the hubs and talking about the communities joining and the story that is behind each of the experiences, I would like to welcome the chair of the Governing Council of the URU Commission, Ms. Violet Chivutse, as one of the UN major groups, grassroots organizations, and civil society that should be part of each of the solutions to make these solutions sustainable. If you want the solutions to be sustainable, we need the people to be in, the communities to be on board, and to be part of it, in generating it and in implementing it. Ms. Chivutse, how do you see the accelerative impact of the local for action hubs that have been presented? And how would you define the parameters from your side, from the Commission point of view, to accelerate the local action?
Thank you so much. So I want to say that Wairu Commission is a global movement of grassroots women-led organizations. And we have actually been working closely with UCLG and other partners. And the first thing we did was we developed together a paper on women's empowerment and gender equality, which was adopted in Durban, and that was actually a very good start. And I want to say that I'm so happy that this discussion is coming today. This morning, I was in a meeting with my deputy governor and technical support team for policy implementation at the county level in Kakamega County. And we were looking at a policy, a guideline that communities have written on how we can adopt this to become a policy for the county for small-scale farmers that would enable small-scale farmers to lease land. And this is how close we are to these issues, because when we are talking about grassroots women, we are talking about people that want to work very closely with the local authority. Since the time I began working as a caregiver in my community, it has never been easy to access national government and plan together, or to have an initiative that the community have developed and get this initiative being adopted by the national government. But with the local government, we are able to actually interact. We can actually develop a roadmap to where we want to go, what policy we want to make, and it has been so easier for us to work in that kind of manner. So I really appreciate the invitation to join this panel, and I would like to commend UCLG for launching the Local for Action Hub. It is very timely. My understanding is that the hub is a networking space, which is very good, and it's aimed at showcasing and promoting localizing SDGs agenda, particularly in the context of focusing on COVID era and for the 2030 agenda implementation to empower recovery efforts. In this response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Wairu Commission members in Africa, Asia, and Latin America and Caribbean have taken upon themselves to respond to the needs of the community, despite limited resources that we have been facing. And we have begun looking at innovative solutions and indigenous ways that can help actually reduce the negative implication of the pandemic and bring the response, at least, to adopt what the local communities are envisioning. On the onset, I would mention like an organization like DAMPA in Philippines, which is a federation of 235 women-led organizations, worked directly with the local authorities to significantly increase the number of recognized local food ration card holders so that more households in informal settlement could have stable food supplies. And the members of DAMPA also started the kitchen gardening, community vegetable, and gardens that have taken the offer to local governments to use the vacant lands to expand these initiatives. So this is actually the kind of partnership we are talking about. For example, my own organization in Shibuya, during the planting season, when we had planned to start doing trainings, we were able to adopt on working with the local government to come up with a way that we would train using mobile phones and how that would reduce on how grassroots women can access internet and even access bundles, because here we don't have Wi-Fi, so that we could continue with the training. And even this policy that I'm talking about that was drafted with the community focused more on that time on land leasing, and that is how we were able to come out with the roadmap. At the global level, in June 2020, Wairu Governing Council and Global Secretariat, we established $100,000 US, which we called Resilience Funds for COVID-19. And it was an initiative to help our members to go ahead during this crisis and be able to position the grassroots women activities that we're doing as frontliners. This provided seed money to support community organizing, information gathering like data collection, livelihood, health security work, and among others. This year, we have allocated 150 for the Grassroots Women Partnership and Innovation Fund as a component of our Grassroots Women Global COVID-19 Recovery Platform. This platform is a critical component of our work to improve livelihoods, living conditions, and opportunities for urban and rural indigenous women. We share with UCLG the same objective, the spirit and urgency in accelerating and supporting local action, where the centrality of the local government and organized grassroots women groups, participation and leadership are key driver in innovating solutions of the COVID-19 recovery for us to meet the SDGs. As pointed in the UN Secretary General Policy Brief in April 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the centrality of local action by local government, and community-based organizations, grassroots organizations, highlighted this observation that many women-led organizations in community-based groups have been in the forefront, responding to the needs of the community and managing and addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think this is actually looking at all this. It is timely, and it is very important for us to have these hubs. And as Wairu Commission, we are supporting this initiative, and we want to drive together to be able to actually show how the local authority, grassroots women, we have a process in Wairu Commission that we call local to local. We can be able to accelerate implementation of the SDGs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair. Indeed, women in leadership, joining women with leadership and local action can make really a big difference. I know we are straight off time. I will not be going back to the speakers right now. I would like to open the debate and leave it in the hands of Emilia Saiz, our Secretary General, for the debate and for the reactions with some specific guests that we have. Emilia, I think it has been really enriching listening the first part of the panel. I'm really excited to see the reactions in the second part.
Thank you very much, Firdaus and colleagues. Indeed, it has been very exciting because, in fact, only last year in 2020, we gathered in Tangier for the first time talking about local for action hubs. And I remember you were in charge of that session, Firdaus, and I remember people asking questions and not understanding, and it was too complex. I see Carla is smiling. She knows the feeling of, okay, this is a dream that we have and it will not come true. And I see now so many hubs coming up, more and more cities are requesting this. We have opened a special a special support effort for low-income countries and least developed country cities. So we are very proud of the evolution, and I agree very much with Johannes that it is about linking it with the rest, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, Johannes. This is why for us, having UNDESA recognize this as part of the Acceleration Action Platform initiative is extremely important. To see how we link up with the labs of UNDP that were presented in the previous session is critical, and to have it all under the umbrella of the Venice City solution as hub of hubs is extremely critical. And this, what we hope is that this will also inform the UN Habitat platform that is going to be feeding into the reporting on the new urban agenda next year. So very exciting indeed. And then to my dear colleague, Violet, whom I haven't seen or hugged for a while now, I would like to say that probably what she was discussing this morning at her county could be potentially a local for action hub. So let's look into this, Violet, and make sure that this community-driven small farmers policy development can also be seen as part of the achievement of the no hunger SDG. This is what we are talking about. So in this next segment, I've got a very interesting short list of speakers, but I would also challenge ourselves to get questions. So do raise your hands, don't hesitate. But allow me to start with Nicholas Yu. He's the Executive Director of the Guangzhou Institute for Urban Innovation. As you know, Guangzhou has been a president for UCLG for several terms, is now the president of Metropolis. It is a very key member of UCLG in China, together with Xi'an and Beijing and the Friendship Association. And with Guangzhou, we put in place an award, the Guangzhou Award, which is a UCLG award. And we have been doing a lot of work to ensure that the award didn't only stay in the recognition, but that it would contribute to the rest of the work of UCLG. And Nicholas has been putting a lot of emphasis in linking it also with the SDG agenda, because SDGs are at the core of our strategy. So I'm really delighted to see Nicholas with us today. I give you the floor, Nicholas, to give us some feedback on how you see the local for action hubs growing and connecting with the rest of things that we are doing together. The floor is yours, dear friend.
Thank you very much, and greetings to all. It's good to see many familiar faces again. As Amelia said, we have been running the Guangzhou Award now since a decade. The purpose of the award is the sharing of lessons learned. And I would just like to say that, you know, in everything we hear in this session, but also in other sessions, and especially in the chat spaces, people seem to be coming back to the same questions over and over again. How do we go to scale? How do we accelerate? And I think what we have learned over the past decade, looking at over 1,000 examples of successful implementation of sustainable development at the local level, is that the hubs that we are trying to create right now have to focus on two key issues in order for us to be able to help other communities to go to scale. And the first one is that we need to have a very clear focus on an articulated expression of lessons learned. I think all too often what happens at the local community level, but even at the national level, is that we focus on what we did. Right? So if I look at the voluntary local reports, most of the voluntary local reports say, all right, this is what we did. What we need to focus more and more on is how it was done. What were the means that were used? How were the resources mobilized? How were the difficulties overcome? How were the obstacles overcome, right? And I think this is where cities can begin to learn from each other and where the lessons learned become useful to national or federal governments, right? Describing what one does is not something that it lends itself easily to the sharing of lessons learned, nor does it lend itself to applicability. But really focusing on what are the lessons and the means that were put into place in order to achieve the necessary outcomes within necessary timeframes, I think is very important. Now, from our experience also, when we look at the lessons learned, we come back to, I think, just a few simple principles that have allowed cities and regions to really share their lessons learned and be able to transfer those lessons learned to others. The first one is we talk about participation, we talk about how can we include social actors, how can we include the private sector, etc. We rarely talk about real engagement, right? I think the partnership notion that most of us are using is still one, oh, let's try to get people involved, participate in a discussion, dialogue, etc. We need to go beyond that. We need to go way beyond partnership. We need to engage people. And by engaging, I mean giving them a real stake in the outcomes. One example I can think of, which is quite well known in local government circles, is the participatory budget. Now, it's not just giving people a say in what's going to be done, it's giving people decision-making power on part of the actual budget and how it's going to be spent. I think another lesson that we have learned is that we need very strong local leadership. This has become very, very clear, especially if we look at what happened during the pandemic. What happened during the pandemic in far too many countries was a breakdown in leadership. We would have contradictory messages coming from different people, from different entities, different institutions, right? So, and possibly the best leader is always the leader that's closest to the people. So I think that's a very, very important lesson learned, is that we have to recognize local leadership. And this is a very strong message that we have to send to central government. But it also means that local authorities have to recognize leadership where it is. Right? And that includes leadership at the community level, leadership at the industry level, leadership at the commerce level. And I think this is very important. We analyzed over 15 successful cases of how cities were dealing with the pandemic. And one of the key lessons we learned from there was that really how the local authority or the central government really recognized leadership at the community, commercial, or industrial level. Another key takeaway is that we need to emphasize more and more that the old way of doing business, the sectoral approach, the siloed approach, is not going to allow us to achieve the SDGs. We really need to focus on a systems approach, right? And this, I think, is becoming quite apparent from the success stories that we're collecting from around the world, including those that we heard about today, is that cities are beginning to realize you can't separate water from energy, energy from land from people, from housing, etc. So cities are really beginning to tackle these issues in all of their complexity, and that is a very, very good takeaway. But unfortunately, what are our central governments doing? They're still holding us to key performance indicators sector by sector. And this I see as a barrier, a key barrier that has to be overcome. Because the successful cases of implementing the SDGs, overcoming the challenges of the pandemic, were all those that showed that they were breaking away from business as usual, tackling several SDGs simultaneously, looking at the complexity of the problem rather than trying to simplify it and break it down into bite-sized pieces. My last comment is effectiveness. I think we have focused far too long in a technology-driven world on efficiency. If I look at smart city approaches, how they have evolved over the last decade and a half, we've been focusing on efficiency, and often to the detriment of effectiveness. Are we doing the right thing? Right? It's not doing the thing right and incurring cost efficiencies, etc. We have to go back and ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing? And that right thing for the moment, I think, without a doubt, up until 2030 and possibly beyond, are the SDGs. So they have to play. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Very interesting reflections. And if I may pick up on your last point about are we being efficient, and is efficiency all we need? I think that this crisis that we are still in is not over, the pandemic. And we are only starting to notice the impact that is having. It has shown us that people also allow governments to make mistakes. The making mistakes is not the problem. We need to learn together. It's about not feeling part of the decision that is the big issue. So we come back to your first point. And also that a lot of the efficiency measures that we can take and the technical solutions that we find might not be enough for the spirits of people. For people, survival is not enough. Our civilizations have been shaped by much more than the urge to survive, but by the urge to create, to liaise, to live in society. So I think these are very important also when we bring it back to achieving the SDGs. People need to own this. Thank you very much for those thoughts. And I am going now to go to the African continent with Jacqueline Moustache Bell. She was my co-president for a full mandate. She was also she's also been working in the cabinet of the president of Seychelles. She has a journalist career behind her as well, and we are very lucky to have her with us in United Cities and Local Governments Africa. So it's really great to see you with us, Jacqueline. A few thoughts on the importance of local action and the transformative potential from the perspective of the African continent. The floor is yours.
Yeah. All right. So I'm on now. Can you hear me, everybody? Yeah. Thank you very much, Emilia. And it's a pleasure to see familiar faces, and thanks for the introduction. With the UCLG Africa, we have been moving things around in line with the local hub for the strategy that we have to move along in the SDGs. So when we talk about accelerating local action and the sustainable recovery of the territories, we need to address 4 crucial points. And these points are the innovation, equity, solidarity, and the equality. They are very crucial for us in order to ensure that we do not leave neither people nor territories behind. And this is why UCLG Africa highlights them in the implementation of its programs and in the support of its members. The programs we have developed all focus on reducing social and territorial inequalities. For cities, for example, it is important that we share with you, for those who do not know yet, the innovative initiative that Africa has, UCLG Africa has, and it's called the Africa Territorial Agency. This is the ATA, which is to mobilize private sector financing to accelerate the implementation of projects related to the sustainable developments and to foster recovery. So what is this about? It's a financial vehicle, and it acts as an interface between cities and the financial markets to raise the necessary financial resources for cities and the local authorities. And thanks to this initiative, all local authorities, large or small, rural or urban, can access the ATA. We shorten it to ATA funding. The pooling system put in place makes it possible to mutualize costs and to allow small or poor communities that will not have been able to access the financial market individually to be given the opportunity. Presently, we have about 50 municipalities registered for the scheme, and we expect to reach a total of about 100 altogether. And as we speak, for Benin, it is work in progress between the municipality of Cotonou, UCLG Africa, and potential financial institutions. And they're working on the funding of infrastructure and capacity building for the city. With regards to migration, because we have this issue all over the world and we have it as well in Africa, we have a charter on migration that was adopted in 2018. And this is done to carry out concrete actions between UCLG, that UCLG Africa has set up, and we work alongside the International Organization for Migration. And this is to create a dialogue for the stakeholders with local authorities to enable a shared governance on migration. And it is also to help to better coordinate actions to assist migrants during the crisis, to prepare the post-COVID phase, and also the integration of migrants in the city. As for issues affecting women, there is a partnership that you're aware of at the moment between UCLG World, CMR, and this has been initiated to create a charter of local authorities for gender equality in Africa, for women in Africa. The charter is to concretize the idea of solidarity between cities on the issue of gender equality, of course, and work on this document is well underway, and it will come to its end by the end of next month. And we plan to present it to the members of UCLGA during the edition of the next AfriCity, which will be held in April 2022. And further for women, we have developed 2 campaigns in order to create that. All this is in mind with the equality and equity for women this time. And these campaigns are aimed at creating an African municipal movement to promote women's rights on issues that are directly affecting them. The campaign for African cities with zero tolerance to violence against women and girls was launched in 2019. And Paintsville City in Liberia is active, very active, is one of the cities that is very active on the campaign. And equally is Bissau, a village in Burundi. They have put in place mechanisms to stop violence against women, amongst which is a hotline that the victim can call to be assisted. They are also working with several NGOs with the relevance to that topic for them to create a database for women victims of violence. And they are also mobilizing funding from UN Women to assist with the implementation of their program. The other campaign that we're strongly on and supporting is the campaign for economic empowerment of women, and especially now after the COVID-19, the pandemic. The campaign, we launched it in March, so it's only a few months old. We have at the moment 80 membership across Africa, and 2 major cities that are very actively involved is the city of Douala from Cameroon, and then the city of Libreville from Gabon. We have also started.
I need you to wrap up in 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Then in that case, I'll go directly to our campaign of the cities, the African cities. with children with no African cities should have street children. And this is, we have some cities that they already have this going on. And in the framework of this campaign, we would like to talk to all the cities of the world. If we are to keep on talking about inclusivity, if we are to keep on talking about leaving no one behind, then this campaign should not only be a campaign for Africa, it should be a campaign for the children of the world, because we cannot talk about inclusivity, we cannot talk about leaving no one behind when we close the doors to our children at night and we leave them to experience the roughness of the street. We are not continuing the social fabric that we believe in. We are destroying the values. It's a breach of values. And from UCLG Africa, we call upon all the cities of the world and to look out for the children. If you do not have this program in your city, then reach out for other cities who are encountering it and lend a helping hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. We have been indeed discussing with UCLG Africa also, and in particular with REFELA, the network of local elected women of Africa, the possibility to actually organize work around this campaign at global level. And it might be an interesting thought to organize it around the local for action hubs. So we take that into account, and thank you for sharing the priorities of the African continent with us. Allow me now to go to a global partner. Ines Madariaga is the newly elected Vice President of the General Assembly of Partners. Niklas and myself, we are also active members of the Executive Committee of this General Assembly that gathers stakeholders around the Habitat Agenda. A very critical partner for us as we approach Quito +5 next year. Ines, I hope you are enjoying the start of your mandate. We are delighted to have you with us. Some thoughts from your perspective on how important local action can be and what kind of links can we establish with other stakeholders to make our actions actually really, truly accelerate. Ines.
Thank you so much, Emilia, for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here sharing with you these few minutes. And as a newly elected GAP Vice President, I'm just landing on this position. I was formerly co-chair of the Research and Academia Partner Constituency Group. And of course, I know that you all know about GAP, which is a global platform uniting about 58,000 networks and over 1,000 institutions and many hundred persons, organized in 70 partner constituency groups that represent the main groupings of civil society, such as women, certainly, who are really very active and very effective group, academia, the elderly, people with disabilities, etc. Media, etc. So we have this very strong global representation of civil society around the world, and the history of GAP since its creation in 2014 has been a very, I think, a very important contribution to the development of the new urban agenda and now to its implementation. So now in this new at this moment of implementation, we are working on a number of areas. The first one is on creating, contributing and expanding and bringing in the knowledge that comes from the stakeholders, and this we are starting to gather experiences and initiatives from stakeholders that would provide this additional platform of knowledge to that UN Habitat has already set up. That's one thing in which we can certainly work with UCLG and develop different sorts of collaborations, creating this platform of knowledge. And then a second field of action. These fields of actions were already set up in a document called Partnerships for the New Urban Agenda that GAP published in 2016, and on which we are working at this moment on how to put in practice. The second one is obviously advocacy, and we work in advocacy in all the processes that are around the implementation of the New Urban Agenda at different levels, nationally, thematically, regionally, locally, regionally within countries, and also regionally according to UN regions, global regions. So our different constituencies are and members are very active in all these processes, and then. We are also contributing to the monitoring formally by contributing to the processes set up by UN Habitat. For instance, I was a member of the expert group that produced the first quadrennial report. But also we want to contribute by contributing information that can be gathered from among our membership, so that produces maybe data that is slightly different from that produced from official sources, and that brings in this different contribution from the stakeholders. And then there's a fourth area of action that is set up in our partnerships for the New Urban Agenda document that relates to innovation. And here we also think that we can also partner up with UCLG and UCLG members by contributing the stakeholders to our diverse membership that is global. And as, for example, as Sri has mentioned about the women, that's the kind of initiatives and contributions that we can mobilize. So that's a very short introduction to what a global platform for stakeholder participation can produce. GAP has this. I think it's a positive thing of uniting in one single platform all these diverse constituencies, which allows for complementarity and for avoiding some duplicity. So here we are to contribute and to engage with you in any ways that you also can think that we can contribute to this common work for sustainable urbanization.
Thank you very much, Ines. Always a pleasure to hear from you and the ideas. I think it's very important for people in the room and for partners to realize how much in United Cities and local governments, how attached we are to working with all stakeholders. We have what we call a town hall process, which started in the process towards our Durban Congress, our triennial Congress in 2019. Next year, we have another Congress coming up. The town hall process has never stopped. And of course, the General Assembly of Partner is a very key partner for this town hall process. Some of the priorities that you have lined up for us will be very critical collaboration areas for our two constituencies. And I would like to see some of the work that we are doing in the local for action hubs being enriched by this as well. I come back to what Johannes was saying before about linking all of these things. We don't want to work in silos, also not within our own organization. So the local for action hubs need to showcase the action on SDGs, but they also need to feed into our proposal for the future, the new social contract that the UN Secretary General is calling for and that our leadership is very committed to in the Pact for the Future. So I hope, colleagues, that you see how all of this is linked, intertwined, and how all of our individual efforts and works in our own organizations are adding up layers to this joint initiative. And I am going to go back home a little bit to our own membership, giving the floor to Manuel Redaño, el director ejecutivo del Fondo Andaluz de Municipios para la Solidaridad Internacional. Esta vez, Manuel, quería decir el nombre completo porque es un nombre muy bonito, que ya en sí significa muchísimas cosas, y cuando decimos fancy se queda solo para los que los conocemos muy bien. Pero toda una región de mi país, todos los municipios de esa región se unen para hacer solidaridad, para estimularla, para entenderla, para crearla, y además a nivel internacional. Y como miembro de CGLU, FAMSI tiene también un Local for Action Hub, y quería invitarte, Manuel, a que compartas con nosotros qué significa este tipo de actividad para FAMSI y cómo lo ves tú potenciando y acelerando acción. A ti la palabra, querido amigo, y muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Muchas gracias a ti, Emilia, por esas palabras cariñosas, como siempre, y por presentar a la entidad, ¿verdad?, con un nombre tan bonito como tú dices que tiene, ¿no?, que yo creo que representa los valores de nuestra tierra y de las entidades que tenemos como socias, ¿no? Por lo tanto, antes que nada, quiero agradecer la invitación y saludar a todas y a todos, muchos amigos y amigas presentes en la sesión de hoy y en la anterior, y bueno, y felicitar como no la iniciativa promovida por CGLU, porque necesitamos desde los territorios conectarnos con la visión global, pero también necesitamos que la visión global tenga esa perspectiva del local y territorial, porque al final esa comunión que CGLU nos facilita, pues yo creo que es un éxito y bueno, lo estamos viendo en el día a día, por lo tanto reitero esa felicitación, ¿no? Como se ha manifestado tanto en este taller como en el anterior, los gobiernos locales son fundamentales para la consecución de los ODS y para la Agenda 2030, yo creo que ha quedado bastante claro. Y yo lo diría incluso de otra forma, yo diría que los ODS son locales. El alma de los ODS yo creo que tiene un alma muy vinculada al mundo local, a las competencias de nuestros territorios y de nuestros socios y gobiernos locales, y yo creo que ahí hay un valor añadido que tenemos que impulsar, ¿no?, y reconocer. El hub de servicios públicos que lideramos desde FAMSI se vincula, yo diría que con casi todos los ODS, pero si tuviéramos que determinar dos, en este caso lo vinculamos al ODS 11 de ciudades y comunidades sostenibles y al 17 de alianzas para lograr los objetivos, pero como digo, los servicios públicos tienen un papel protagonista en casi, yo diría, los 17 ODS, y por lo tanto vamos a tener un trabajo muy vertebrador, ¿no? En este sentido, la capacidad que tienen los gobiernos locales para la consecución de los ODS creo que tiene que ver mucho con la prestación de los servicios públicos de los cuales son competentes, y que también en este espacio de reflexión son claves para la aceleración de la agenda. Debemos avanzar en tener servicios públicos que aseguren la calidad de vida de la población y, por lo tanto, tiene mucha incidencia en muchas partes de lo que tienen que ver con los 17 objetivos, ¿no? Además, y no me alegro de ello, pero lo quiero poner en valor, en este tiempo de pandemia, creo que los servicios públicos han sido fundamentales para asegurar el modelo social y la calidad de vida de muchos territorios. Servicios que pudiéramos identificar como prestación de agua, residuos, servicios sociales y un largo etcétera, que tienen competencia muchos de nuestros gobiernos locales, han funcionado bastante bien. Yo diría que muy bien en general, y a pesar de las dificultades que nos hemos encontrado y el camino que hemos tenido que andar y aprender sobre la marcha en una situación tan grave. Pero tú lo comentabas antes, Emilia, yo creo que ahora, aunque todavía no estemos en plena recuperación, todavía estamos en una fase diferente y muchos territorios todavía creo que lo están pasando peor que el nuestro, pero quiero resaltar que el papel que van a tener los servicios públicos en esta fase de recuperación, cuando cada territorio nos vaya tocando, creo que va a ser fundamental. Los servicios públicos aseguran el acceso universal a la población de servicios que son básicos para la vida, pero también, por ejemplo, apuestan por calidad de empleo, y creo que en el mundo que tenemos por delante vamos a tener que hablar mucho del empleo de las personas, de las rentas de las personas, y por lo tanto también de la calidad de esos empleos y a dónde nos va a llevar esa parte, ¿no? Del hub que, además, que lideramos en el sentido de los servicios públicos, no podemos obviar la innovación. En todas las facetas, yo creo, de la actividad, la innovación es crítica. Y si me lo permiten, siempre se pone en valor la innovación en el mundo privado, en el mundo empresarial, que no la discuto ni la voy a cuestionar, pero creo que también en el mundo público es importante la innovación y en este caso ligado a los servicios públicos. Tenemos que pensar en servicios públicos que busquen la calidad, la excelencia, que aborden la transición ecológica y la asuman y por supuesto la sostenibilidad en un sentido amplio del término, también la económica, por supuesto, porque al final, desde nuestro punto de vista, los servicios públicos son servicios rentables y si no lo medimos en el sentido de la economía, lo podemos medir en la rentabilidad social que estos servicios tienen, ¿no? Es fundamental también para nosotros la aceleración de la agenda. Yo creo que llevamos ya más de un tercio consumido. Es verdad que los 2 últimos años están siendo complejos, pero tenemos que acelerar contribuyendo desde esta parcela pública a aspectos innovadores que desde lo local se puede transferir, se puede compartir. Son proyectos de aprendizaje muy horizontales. Creo que hay algo que nos une, que es la mirada pública en el mundo de CGLU y por lo tanto yo creo que ese intercambio de conocimiento y de buenas prácticas es fundamental. En ese sentido, queremos abordar el desarrollo de metodologías, de herramientas que faciliten este proceso y su replicación de forma escalable. Seguramente no es lo mismo hablar del mundo rural que del mundo urbano, pero tenemos que abordar la capacidad de incidir en la agenda que tienen cada uno de nuestros gobiernos locales, ¿no? Pero además tenemos herramientas muy interesantes y conecto con esa vertiente que tú nos presentabas, ¿no? De solidaridad y cooperación. Tenemos que fortalecer la cooperación técnica. La cooperación técnica desde los territorios, a nivel multinivel, perdón por la expresión, desde lo local, pero también de lo regional. Compartir la innovación en los servicios públicos, modelos eficientes, que lo tenemos y podemos presumir de ello y que contribuya a que nuestras ciudades puedan acelerar en el cumplimiento de su agenda, de sus compromisos con la Agenda 2030, pero incluso incorporando la cooperación como una política palanca, ¿no? No quiero olvidar que muchos de los presentes y muchas de las entidades que participan, algunos incluso han expuesto, somos aliados y nos encontramos mucho en el camino. Eso también nos lo ofrece CGLU, nos permite compartir con muchos de los socios, por ejemplo Cuenca, que ha expuesto antes muy bien su hub y que yo creo que también es uno muy interesante donde colaboramos con ellos, o nuestros amigos de PNUD, de Nuevo Hábitat, donde la verdad que hay una relación estable y cariñosa, ¿no? Finalmente, no quiero olvidar invitarles a participar activamente en el hub de servicios públicos. Yo creo que es un interés que podemos compartir perfectamente entre todos los gobiernos locales, la calidad de los servicios públicos, y va a haber una agenda que se va a promover muy interesante con acciones de producción, de intercambio de conocimiento y todo siempre vinculado a acelerar el cumplimiento de la agenda. Por lo tanto, no me voy a extender mucho más, agradecer la invitación de nuevo y felicitar por la iniciativa. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias sobre todo, Manuel, porque nos recuerdas la importancia de un tema con el que yo estoy obsesionada desde la pandemia. Yo creo que los servicios públicos locales, quizás la discusión sobre eso y ponerles en el centro de la agenda transformadora, es algo que no hemos hecho con suficiente resolución, ¿no? Estamos hablando de la acción local en general, de los gobiernos locales, de sus competencias, pero al tomar el servicio público como referencia, creo que hay cosas que se cambian, que empezamos a entender de otra manera. Es lo que tú hablabas en esta pandemia que estamos viviendo. El servicio público, hemos seguido abriendo el agua, salía el agua, hemos seguido viendo como también en las zonas del sur global, con zonas informales, los gobiernos locales han intentado facilitar servicios ahí. Creo que tenemos que cambiar ese espacio y de ahí la importancia del hub que has presentado y también recordar este aspecto de los Local for Action Hubs. Los Local for Action Hubs son iniciativas locales que al ser reconocidas por CGLU adquieren un carácter internacional. Y un carácter internacional no solo de visibilización, pero también de aprendizaje, ¿no? Y eso es lo que estamos intentando hacer también en la conexión con el Venice City Solution. Y ahora voy a Carla Rey. Carla Rey, Secretary General of AICRE, of the Italian Association, but also the convener of the Venice City Solution, the previous session to this one, the hub of hubs, as we call it. That international dimension, this peer-to-peer learning, is very critical for the hubs, indeed. So how are you experiencing this presence this year in the high-level political forum, dear friend Carla? I think a very inspiring session on Venice, an inspiring session now. We are progressing. The floor is yours from for some final thoughts on this.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you for the invitation. I think that, as you said, it's amazing to be here at the HLPF to talk about the Local for Action Hub, because we were starting talking in Tanger, and then we had the pandemic. And obviously, the global scenario became even more complicated. But I feel that we have three key actions that are the potentials of the Local for Action Hub. And I want to conclude with these three aspects. The first one is the acceleration. The second is the synchronization. And the third, I would say, listening to this session, the equality. Why we have so many potential? Because the acceleration for the transformation is based on action and strategies that are already demonstrated in their validity at the local level. So we are not starting from ground zero. And then we have those actions already monitored in terms of results. And also don't forget that the actions of the hubs are based on innovative approaches, because they start from the local needs. This is quite new as a start. And then we are trying to build for every hub the ability to scale up, to achieve, as you say, not only national and international levels, but to move from local to global. Second, synchronization. This is another key aspect for us. It's a point of strength, because the hub's proposal, as we heard, can be adapted in different societies. And also, we are looking for the replicability of the excellence in other geographical context. And we are also looking at not overlapping with other solutions. We are looking for complementarity in the hubs. And as you said, mutual learning is a key aspect for synchronization, and also the action shared with the stakeholders. Then we have equality, another strength of the hubs. Equality because the hubs are focused on individual behaviors in citizens that have a collective and global impact, but they are moving and trying to build a new social contract with the citizens to fight inequalities. And then we are trying to look and to build communities that are places of shared values, as the previous speaker said, justice, gender equality, governance, and so on. But mostly, above all, we want places that are searching and looking for common goods. So to conclude, I think that the strength of the Local for Action Hub are the localizing of the SDGs. We start from the point that we start from the local level and the concreteness, I would say, of the local level. And as we heard, the local level had the capability to fight even a pandemic, because they know how to transform crises into opportunities. So let's involve all the actors of the community in this transforming process, and let's hear from the local authorities that have a lot to say in this way. So I feel, Emilia, that with your guidance, the Local for Action hubs will succeed. We are not ready, we haven't achieved all the goals, but we are in the good path. We have 9 years ahead of 2030, but we are ready to to empower all the local authorities in this new challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla, for those encouraging words. We do hope to scale up, to have many more hubs, to ensure also that that we get this visibility. And I want to encourage our members gathered here and partners to do two things. To cities around the world, I would encourage them, and local governments and their associations, to register their actions in the acceleration action platforms, to get their actions recognized. We can certainly help you with that. And I would like stakeholders, civil society gathered here to, like we were discussing with the friends from the Wairu Commission, to encourage their local governments to join this movement and to present their initiatives, because the only way that national governments, like Elkin Velázquez was saying at the very beginning, are going to be understanding what we do and truly look at local action not as an issue of concern or power fight, is going to be if we actually show them what we are able to do and how we can contribute hand in hand. Local action is not a trade-off to global action or to national action. It's a complementarity that is truly, truly necessary for the achievement of the agendas. Dear colleagues, my team has been sharing with you that you can join our call, which is still open until the 30th of July for new hubs. We encourage those of you that are in low-income countries and that know partners in these countries that have very good ideas, but they are not sufficiently developed or financed or need more visibility, to actually let us know about them, see how we can help them with the Local for Action hubs and how we can scale up all this action that is here. Thank you, team, for a good, solid session, and thank you, participants. Thank you, dear friends. Tomorrow, Local and Regional Governments Day of the High Level Political Forum 2021. We look forward to seeing many of you there and many of your friends. We have many elected officials joining. It will be worth it. Thank you, colleagues. Bye-bye. Cuídense mucho. Keep healthy, please. See you tomorrow. Bye.